Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews and the... No, done it wrong, haven't I? Harry Potter and the Rewind Reviews. I was like, Rewind Reviews and the Harry Potter? That's not a thing. Harry Potter and the Rewind Reviews are special kind of little spin-off podcast where we're taking a look at all the Harry Potter films, top to bottom, including the stupid Grindelwald, Dumbledore, Newt Scamander nonsense at the end. We are currently up to the sixth movie, Half-Blood Prince. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult because, you know, I've not seen much of the movie, mainly because you can see fuck all during most of this movie.
Well,
so it's going to be hard to review it.
We'll dive straight in, but like we have done with the last couple. I'll add the same tag that if you want our history with the franchise in general, that's at the top of the first episode. We sort of talk about our interest in the books and our experience with the films growing up, which sets up our sort of positions on them now, revisiting them after all this time. Particularly for me, these last couple I haven't seen since I saw them in the cinema. I never felt the desire to go back and watch Half-Blood Prince again after seeing it at the cinema. I understand why, having rewatched it now.
Well,
I was going to say, I think you do have something, didn't you? Specific to this film, you wanted to add.
Yes, so I do have a bit of a memory of film specific. So I was so uninfused at this point, even watching them, that I didn't go to the cinema and see this one.
Oh wow!
So
really, after Order, which we actually both thought was all right.
Yeah, I think it was just. You
put Order first last week.
I'm sure I did. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. Yeah, in this rewatch, but don't forget at the time it would. That's that's after looking at it with a reviewer's eye and all of that stuff.
Sure.
Probably at the time, I'm just like, it's not like the book. Which is probably a succinct summary of a lot of episodes of this podcast. But for whatever reason, a lot going on in my life.
Save yourselves a lot of time, guys. Just take that little snippet of Chris being like, it's not like the book, and assume that's our complaint for the next two.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to listen to the rest of it. When did the film come out in terms of... Yeah, 7th of July. So
2009, right?
Busy with work. Huh? Oh, 9, yeah, 15.
Yeah, this is one of the first ones that wasn't like a Christmassy or wintry release, I think.
So I didn't see it, but I lived with someone at uni. Let's call him Stan. And I seem to remember. So Stan had obtained a copy of the film. And Stan accidentally one day, gave it to me, because he would never, do anything, it was purely accidental. But I remember saying to Stan, Stan saying, "Oh, did you watch Harry Potter?" And I remember saying, "Nah, I tried to, but I don't think it's a very good copy." And they were like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, it's all just a bit kind of grainy and green, and so I think it's just maybe the camera it's been shot on or something like that. It's just all a bit weird. So I'll just wait for like the DVD." And I assume at that point I seem to remember Stan being like, "No, that's the film." Like, that's not. So yeah, I just remember even then being aware, and then I watched it on DVD, and it was it is. Should we dive into that first, Dan?
Well,
the weird colouring.
Well, I do want to talk about that. We could start with that. I've got a wider thing I want to ask you, but let's start with that. Yeah, I mean, there was a piece of trove specifically about this. About the color grading. Let me see if I can find it, because this was like a really specific thing. 1 second. Can I find it? I bet I can't now. I need it. Because why would I be able to find something once I need it? So basically, they brought on a new director of photography, I think, for this one. And they wanted... The original cut was actually somehow even more dark and green and weird. And Yates really liked it, and the studio made him change it. So, I mean, this is like a compromised version, which is really terrifying because I do think this movie looks horrible and muddy and brown and grey in like ways that are
brown
not appealing.
And grey
it's just,
and green.
Yeah.
There's, even in the cave where arguably they could make use of it, there are scenes in the cave that look black and white. Like, it doesn't even look like the film's got any colour.
Yeah.
And like, it maybe adds a bit of atmosphere to those scenes, but like you say, it looks like you're watching the film through a really horrible filter for most of it, and it really does put you off. And I don't get, because I get I get that someone could make a thematic argument for it, where they could go, well, look, Voldemort is out in the open now. I mean, not in this film, but in the world, Voldemort is out in the open now. There's Death Eaters everywhere. Hope is draining from the world. And there's therefore this weird saturation. But it's like, this is part 6 of a 7 to 8, because who knows whether they decided on splitting the 7th book then. But this is book 7, book 6, this is film 6 of at least a 7-part series. What are you doing? Like, you can't just suddenly shift the colour palette and shift. And I know there's been a bit of that before, obviously Prisoner of Azkaban, we've talked a lot about the distinct cinematography in that, but it's not, it doesn't feel like a musty green brown filter has been slapped on that film like it does with this. And it is, I'm sorry, it's just really off-putting.
Yeah, so I've got the trivia here. So, wanting to bring a different look to this movie, David Yates chose French cinematographer Bruno Delbonnel, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, known for his use of stylistic colour palettes and often featuring prominent earthy tones. At first, the movie was extensively colour graded, but due to the overly dark tones, Warner Brothers asked Yates and Delbonnel to add more colour to the movie as they could barely see a thing on screen. Yates and Delbonnel were hesitant to do this at first, but after retouching some of the scenes, Delbonnel realised that he had overused the grading and the final product was much better. Yates remarked that Delbonnel's work on this movie... Yates remarked Delbonnel's work on this movie as a choice of angles, extreme close-ups, the pacing of scenes, it's very layered and incredibly rich. It was the first and ultimately only movie in the Harry Potter franchise to be nominated for a cinematography Oscar. Now, that blows my mind for a couple of reasons. I do think the choice of shots is often interesting in the framing. I think in that sense of the cinematography, I do think it is good. I like even a simple shot of Malfoy pulling down the blinds on the Hogwarts Express is really interestingly framed, and it's pushing in. Small shots like that do look, in that sense, good. But the color grading is no. It's bad. It's real bad. So yeah, very strange to me. And
I think genuinely, like I say, off-putting for the whole movie.
Yeah,
what was your big kickoff question going to be?
Yeah, so okay, This is a long question for you, Chris, but stick with me for a second. Philosopher's Stone is about the Philosopher's Stone being at Hogwarts and someone trying to steal it. Chamber of Secrets is about a secret chamber being opened and a thing attacking the school. Prisoner of Azkaban is about a prisoner escaping from a prison called Azkaban and coming to the school. Goblet of Fire is about the Triwizard Tournament and Harry's trials there. Order of the Phoenix is mostly really about Umbridge's overtaking of the school, but it's still got a pretty clear through line, the Ministry interference at Hogwarts. What the fuck is this movie about?
Oh, who knows, man?
And I think that's a criticism of the book too, actually. But genuinely, tell me what you think this movie is about, because I am fascinated to figure out what this is. On any level.
The movie is part romantic comedy, done badly. It's part exploration into Voldemort, done really badly. It's part...
Not done at all, you mean? Sorry,
beginnings...
I think you mispronounced not done at all there as done badly. It's very strange.
It's beginnings of a war film done done with some good ideas on how to do that, but ultimately done badly. Mm-hmm. It is definitely not an exploration into and a mystery about who the Half-Blood Prince is. Apparently, according to, I don't know, I've referenced him a lot, but Movie Flame's video about this film not only references, apparently there was one scene where a cut scene where they were going to have trolls ballet dancing, which I hope is in the triv, or something like that.
I don't have that. Let me look that up though while you're talking.
Apparently there's footage from the DVD or something of costumes of it. It's madness, but anyway. He touches obviously about how this film isn't really about the Half-Blood Prince mystery. Apparently, because my memory too was, well, that's a theme in the book, but it's probably out of all the books the weakest theme that's then translated to a title. But apparently that potions book and who the Half-Blood Prince is apparently referenced in nearly every single chapter. So I think it does run through the book way more than it does run through the film. The thing is, the book at its heart isn't even really about the Half-Blood Prince. The book at its heart is an exploration into Voldemort. And this film, it's so weird to me, when Order of the Phoenix did such a great job at being an exploration on Harry, why they wouldn't do the obvious thing and make this film an exploration on Voldemort is completely bamboozling to me. Focusing in on the romance side and the teen angst is instead of devoting more time maybe to flashbacks, or in a world where you're sort of going outside of the books and doing things like visualizing the bridge collapse and having the attack on the Burrow and all of those things. If you're stepping outside the book that much, well then step outside the book and go, next movie we really need Voldemort to be this all-powerful villain. Let's fucking show him, shall we? Like, it's just madness, some of the decision-making in this film. Like, it's, Yeah, because it is absolutely mad.
Because on paper, this is potentially a really fun one. Because this is the writer, that gave us Goblet of Fire, which we complimented for the use of the teen love stories and drama, right? Well, the thing we said worked the best in Goblet of Fire was the section in the middle around the Yule Ball. Harry being awkward, not being able to ask out a girl, the Yule Ball itself, Hermione's response to Ron, maybe next time ask me out yourself, straight away instead of being annoyed about me, going with someone else, all this stuff. All that stuff was handled so well and we liked it all. This movie to go, all right, well, we'll put the focus on reminding you, before this series ends, before we get to our epic finale, let's remind you that these are children again. Let's just do a movie that sets up the finale like the book does, but also has a bunch of teen angst in it and teen, love stories and stuff. And I think on paper, that isn't a terrible approach to this one, because again, I even think in book form, the Half-Blood Prince is kind of just like moving the chess pieces around, and doesn't really have a thrust of its own in the way the other books do. It's very much the sort of, it's the prequel to Deathly Hallows rather than its own story, right? So in the world where that's what the book is, I don't think it's a terrible idea to sit down and think, well, I'll focus this one on the teen stuff then while we do all that in the background. I don't mind that they've pared back some of Voldemort's backstory. There's a practical problem with that later on. I just think that the teen drama stuff isn't done that well. I think for the first sort of 45 minutes of this movie, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I was like, this is kind of actually working okay. I kind of like these scenes. I like seeing these characters interact with each other. I think they do. But then they just kind of lose all the threads of everything. Like, they're not even doing the teen drama stuff any good. Like, that's all muddled and confused. Like, they never, the same way that in the last one, they never really explicitly split up Harry and Cho, they never really explicitly end Dean and Ginny. Dean and Ginny. That never ends officially. So it becomes muddled lines of when do Harry and Ginny become a couple. It kind of seems like they're pretty close by the Burrow, but who knows? I don't know. There's tons of weirdness around it and loads of unclarity, because again, it's that same old Steve Kloves thing. He's got shit dialogue, so he doesn't explain anything properly, and he's got no ability to just cut stuff so other things can have more time to breathe. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why the Harry Ginny love story is done in this like so subtle it's barely present like way in the end, which is insane because the whole opening of this movie is setting that up. Why doesn't that become the payoff? I don't understand.
It doesn't even, but it's not even setting up well. It's just it's a series of awkward moments like the shoe tying and then Ron sitting between them, although that is quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few really good funny moments in this. Like, I still love to this day, she thinks you're the chosen one. Well, I am the chosen one. That is still one of my favourite lines in any of these fucking movies. There's a reason they put that line in the trailer. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's very funny. Sorry,
sorry, it's I jumped in to compliment a joke and interrupted you. So we were talking about the.
So there's some So that money that moment is funny, but it's also like they don't have any kind of sweet genuine moments. They don't. I would argue they don't more than. When they get to, they don't really even get together in this film. They share a kiss in front of no one. Harry lies about it to Ron. There is no reason for anyone to go into the next film knowing anything about Harry and Ginny's feelings for each other. They don't break up. They're just, at this point, they're a couple that seem to like each other that have had a kiss. And you're right, Dean and Ginny, for all we know, are still together. We've had references to them fighting when she comes in for the Slughorn thing. Mm-hmm. That's referenced. But we also have Harry liking the idea that I am the chosen one scene is very funny. But surely, if you in the interest of time, when you've got to cut stuff, if Harry and Ginny is a thing that you want to do and actually do properly, then maybe you don't have him jokingly or not lusting over the girl in the library. Maybe you don't have him
Romilda Vane.
Yeah, maybe you don't
whose
have
name
him,
it's impossible to forget because Ron repeatedly is like, Romilda Vane.
Yeah, we'll come back to it because that strikes me as something, you don't... I tell you what, Cloves, instead of doing that because you have to get him to drink the bottle, come up with another way for him to drink the bottle. But anyway, although it is quite funny again. I mean,
it's one of group... This is the problem, is like so many of these scenes, it's like you'd cut it, but it is kind of funny. Like, the Hagrid Acromantula thing, like, Slughorn being like, well, the venom's pretty valuable, is funny, even though you do think Aragog's death is a bit superfluous to the rest of this movie. You could have easily had Harry, drink the Felix Felicis and get the thing out of him another way, but because they're copying the book, and it's that whole thing of being somewhat slavish to the tick boxes of the book, instead of being willing to cut anything wholesale, put a piece of everything in until it doesn't really look like anything anymore.
Look, that whole sequence stays for Daniel Radcliffe's performance alone. It's some of his best work in the whole movie, in the whole 7-8 movies.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe's Harry on Felix Felicis is a joy to watch. That is for sure.
To finish the Harry and Ginny thing, because you're right, it is set up quite nicely at the beginning where he looks at her window and then they have that nice hug, but slightly undercut by the fact that 30 minutes ago he was hitting on a girl at the train station. So, have him lusting in the library and hitting on women in the train station is slightly counterproductive if this is the movie where you want us to believe that Harry and Ginny are perfect and meant to be together.
Right. And I get not doing the Spider-Man thing, because obviously there were a lot of comparisons drawn when the book came out, that it is literally the end of the first Spider-Man film, the Sam Raimi one. The hero... someone has just died, they're at a funeral, the hero approaches the redhead that he's kind of had a thing with and says, it's too dangerous, we can't keep doing this, and leaves. Now, I think in the Spider-Man film he kind of plays it more as we're done and doesn't really give her the explanation. But in Harry Potter, Harry's a bit more, what he says to Ginny at the end of the Half-Blood Prince book, he says, this can't work. Like, I'm kind of a marked man. Like, this isn't going to be, I can't do that to you. This can't be a thing. And there were a lot of comparisons drawn between that and Spider-Man at the time when it came out. So do you think that there's a chance they change the ending of the film to draw less of those comparisons, keep the relationship vague and undefined? So the idea is he never really did commit to her. Therefore, in the next movie, we can have him kind of like sad that they never really got together, but he's got to save the world, which is kind of where he is at the beginning of the next book anyway.
Yeah, maybe, and there's an argument to that, but that to me doesn't forgive any of the stuff at the beginning, and just in general the kind of fairly appalling way it's done. So yes, it avoids a similar beat to another film at the end, but you can change that in some way. We need to go into Deathly Hallows completely believing they're a good couple. I completely get if someone was to say, based on purely the films, they don't buy Harry and Ginny as a couple.
Yep. And the funny thing is, I don't mind that they left it till this book to do hints for it, because one of the things that's funny about the books is Harry and Ginny kind of comes out a little bit out of nowhere in this book, but that's the intent, because the whole point is he doesn't see it in her until a certain point when suddenly he very much does. Right?
And part of that is the fact that she basically in sort of the fifth book, she sort of gives up on... I think there's even a line about how she, somewhere at some point, about basically Ginny gives up on the idea of being with Harry and decides to accept him as a friend and is therefore more herself around him.
Right, they pretty much spend the summer together in the start of this book, because there's a moment in the book version of Half-Blood Prince where they get on the train and Ron and Hermione or maybe that's in the last one, but Ron and Hermione are prefects and Harry goes to get on the train and he's looking for someone to sit with and he just assumes he's going to sit with Ginny, but Ginny runs off to sit with her friends. He's like, oh yeah, we don't really hang out that much at school, and it's like he forgets. So that's pretty interesting, because again in the book it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's got a little bit of setup, but it's explainable, but again it takes Harry by surprise. So I don't even mind that the previous movies didn't set it up in some way. I think that's fine. I think it's more of a concern that that it's handled so poorly in terms of clarification on what's actually happening between them. Because it's like, if you're going to take, basically half your movie's runtime and dedicate it to all these romance subplots, then you've got to pay them off, right? In a way that's satisfying. And the way that is satisfying is to do what the book did, which is sort of get them together, have Harry have a few months of happiness before Dumbledore dies and his reality crashes down around him and he goes, actually... yeah, for a minute there, I kind of forgot I was the chosen one, but it'd be reckless to be in this relationship. And as much joy as it brings me, I've got to sacrifice something here. Dumbledore's death has shown me, has brought me back to Earth. I can't have this life. And that's a powerful moment for that character, right? And why would you lay all the groundwork for that and then not pay that off? I don't understand. Like it's a half of an arc.
You could even echo it in a world where you've already gone beyond the books. You have that moment in the hospital, which is quite a good moment, where Ron is saying Hermione's name, but maybe Harry makes that decision with Ginny. They witness it, and they're like, he maybe says something about, there's a mission to do here. There also can't be distractions, and they sort of look at each other and sort of part away from each other, and you sort of resolve their thing as well. Because coming out of this movie... fuck knows what's going on with them as a couple as well.
Right. Because we spent a lot of it almost feels like by the end of this movie they're basically sort of kind of together but not openly as well. I would not blame someone from walking away from this movie feeling like those two are a couple now.
No, because the movie is that classic. I really don't like sort of putting all the blame on one person, especially for this film, because actually, and we'll get to it, I think some clever but poorly executed adaptation decisions were made. But it comes back down
I assume you're talking about the Top of the Tower.
No, I wasn't even talking about that, actually, so we'll come to that in a sec. But it comes down to the classic seemingly Noel's script decisions of, we're going to concentrate on what the scene requires us to concentrate on, and that's the main thing we're going to do. Like, for example, this is taken, this specific thing was brought up in the Movie Flame video, so credit to them. The Ron in the bed saying Hermione's name. Yeah, really cool, really sweet scene, actually quite a good scene, but undercut because the scene before ends with Ron getting up, seemingly being okay, making a joke, and then lying back down on the ground. And then suddenly he's in bed collapsed and all of that stuff. Because the scene before, he felt needed a joke. And it needed to be about that. And so, the riddle scenes back when they go in his memories are about that, because they need to be about that, and it doesn't link in with the wider films or themes or link in with Voldemort. Like, it's just the problem with these movies are they go scene by scene, focusing on the things that apparently need to be there, but actually just don't necessarily.
Yeah, the scenes never add up to a whole thing, do they? It's he's put his jigsaw together, and he's focused really carefully on making each individual piece do something specific. But then when you stick them together, the actual total image is just garbled nonsense, right? Like, it doesn't actually add up to anything. It's almost like someone's jumbled up the pieces from 90 different jigsaws, and you've just you put them together slapdash and see what image is left, and it's like, oh, well, it looks like nothing, of course, and that's what this is. This, like, in a book that already has the problem of what's this actually about, you combine that with Clove's writing style, and it's just a mess. Like, it says nothing, it goes nowhere. The stuff it's supposed to set up for the finale, it doesn't even do properly. So what's the point? I almost found myself finishing this movie going, God, if this was the version of this movie we were going to get, I'd almost have preferred them to just skip to Deathly Hallows. And I don't mean like skip Deathly Hallows in a way that pretends Dumbledore's still alive. I just mean start Deathly Hallows with Harry remembering Dumbledore's death, and it happened off screen, and it's a mystery, and then have Deathly Hallows play out with occasional flashbacks to the events of Half-Blood Prince. Because honestly, if your alternative is this movie, then this movie can go away.
But it doesn't have to be. Like, there is...
Honestly, no, of course. No, there's again, putting the focus on... Choosing Harry to be the focus and making that love story his arc for this movie, so it's got a clear, beginning, middle, and end. Harry... The movie then becomes about Harry trying to get in a normal teenage life, and then having Dumbledore, his mentor, killed by the bad guys, bringing that reality down to. That's fine. That's your movie then. The movie's about something at that point. But if you don't include any of that, your other option is, maybe we'll do the, like you said earlier, let's focus on the Voldemort backstory then. Let's use this movie to tell the story of Voldemort, and that can be the thrust of our movie, and comparing his journey to Harry's. With the parallels between him and Voldemort and Harry, like talking to Slughorn and stuff. Fine, do that movie then. But choose one of them, choose something, because there's just what's left is nothing, absolute nothing.
And again, credit to Movie Flame here, and I feel like I'm mentioning this YouTube channel too much.
Yeah, you need to stop watching these videos because they are very much influencing.
They're what? Sorry,
they're very much influencing.
No, they have because actually the positive things they say about this movie I don't particularly agree with. But it's a good. They basically have done a 20-minute video essay on each film, and like they're really good video essays. And this point is a nuance that I would not have known about or noticed, and I think it highlights a lot of the problem with the writing. So in this film, the scene where they flash back to Tom Riddle's childhood, Tom Riddle says, I can punish kids that are mean to me, or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. In the book, the line is, I can punish kids who annoy me. And right then and there shows part of the problem with the writing in this series. Mean to seems like a more obvious line, or it's sort of it's an easier way to get across. I don't know. I don't know the reasons for that line change, but it is indicative of a lot of decisions that Knowles make that actually change everything. Because in the film, Voldemort is a kid that is being bullied in an orphanage and is lashing out. In the book, Voldemort is a kid who is in an orphanage and is punishing kids purely because they annoy him and wind him up.
Yeah.
Whilst it is literally
stripping back
one
all the
word.
subtlety.
Yeah, whilst it is literally one word and you think that wouldn't make much of a difference, it completely changes the backstory of who Voldemort is.
Yeah, but you got to think why. And it's not because in Cloves' head, he's a less interesting character if that's the case. He's not making a character choice there. He's making a bad time-saving choice there. That's what that is. It's simpler to just go, well, he's evil. That's why. Than to characterize it because of time. Because it's that same thing again. It's all the pieces are there, and if you want to add the context you have from the book, it still can fit. If you want to add the context of bullied at school or bullied at the orphanage lashing out to that story, there's nothing that directly contradicts that in the version we've got in the movie.
No, but it's... Yeah, but in the movie, it's mean to. In the movie, it is being bullied. It's him doing the bullying more in the book because it's annoying in the book, not the film.
But my point is, he's done it in a way where you've got the pieces, but you're not getting the context. It's same as always, and as a result, you can either fill in the context you want from the book, or you get these really shallow characters that are there just falling through the plot, just present and doing the things they're supposed to do because they're good guy or bad guy. Because this characterization is just isn't a thing. No, let's not worry about it. And it's like he's relying on people's knowledge of the books. He's not. I know he's not because he's not an idiot. Like he must have sat down and gone, I need to make this work as a film on its own. But he failed. I just don't think this is anything. This whole thing. And you're right. That is indicative of a larger writing problem. But it's throughout the whole film. Top to bottom. Again, as always, it's like, here's the information about what a Horcrux is. Okay, do you want to go into some detail about how that has warped Voldemort? Do you want to go into the detail about how, while a Horcrux could be any object, just any old object, Voldemort, characteristically speaking, would have not felt certain objects were worth or up to the job of holding a piece of his soul. They would have to be special objects to him, so that when Harry goes into the next movie, he actually has an idea what he's fucking looking for. Like if the whole point of this movie is to set up the finale, Harry doesn't. By the end of the sixth book, Harry knows he's most likely looking for Helga Hufflepuff's cup, Nagini, something probably of Gryffindor or Ravenclaw's. Unclear which, but he's got an idea it's something from our founder, because Voldemort would have liked the set. He comes out of this film with a locket going, I don't know, fucking have a clue. Dumbledore found a ring, he never told me how he found it. He didn't tell me how he found this. Where do I start? Do I just start going around to every object in the world and stabbing it? Do we know? I was never shown how to destroy a basilisk. I think it's because I was thinking the basilisk venom is one thing to destroy it. I was never shown how to destroy a Horcrux. Never given any information about any of this. Now some of that is true of the book. Dumbledore leaves him intentionally in the dark about certain things, so he has to go on that sort of journey. But again, it's there. We set up what Horcruxes are, but again, none of the further explanation or context, and that's really important. That's really important to your next movie. So I'm expecting the next movie to have a bajillion contrived ways in which Harry stumbles across Horcruxes, because he doesn't actually have anything to go on here.
No, not at all. I'd say the compliment, I think it is because actually the reality is, and it's so funny because I noticed this when I've done a lot of I've got, as we know, I've been rereading the books, and I was looking at covers because there's some alternative covers now in the UK to what they were originally, and this is the one book where the cover remains the same. It remains, it remains Dumbledore, at least on multiple editions, Dumbledore with the flames around him and Harry, and it really made me go, Well, there's actually not really a lot of set pieces in this book. There's Draco on the floor and that stuff. But in terms of big movie-style set pieces, there isn't a lot of them. The decision at the beginning of this film to visualize the bridge collapsing and visualize the destruction on the world and, use that as a shorthand visual thing to avoid the having to do the explanation-rich scenes between Fudge and the Prime Minister and all of that stuff is a good, sensible adaptation decision. But the challenge I have with that stuff is when they do that multiple times in this film, such as also burning down the Burrow, they're just not doing. They don't then do anything with those things. We literally cut away from the Burrow being burnt down. This building, this home we have come to love. That scene in general is also ridiculous. Like, the Weasleys, no one else is chasing after them apart from Lupin and Tonks. And maybe Arthur appears later. I'm sorry, how do Harry and Ginny get past them all? It's ridiculous, let alone the fact that it's fire that chooses to let them specifically past and then inflames and then reparts so that Ginny can get through after Harry and all of that stuff. But the bigger point is, we don't then revisit that. We don't talk about what that's done to the characters. We don't feel that pain because it feels like the decision isn't, let's highlight, we don't have time to go into the nuances of people's parents disappearing and dying and all these things that we can do via the Daily Prophet and spread throughout the book. We don't have time to do all of that. So let's do a couple of big fuck-off things that say, war is here, people, and it means we can add a bit of spice to the visuals of this film, which fundamentally has a fairly epic sequence towards the end, but then, additional character stuff that has to come after that. So that's a good, sensible decision. But you can't just literally make the toys smash into each other and then that's it. You have to do something with those things. Yeah. You have to make them worth something other than seemingly giving you some cool shots for the trailer, which the stuff at the beginning and the burrow burning down feel like they're there in execution more for that than the positive reasons I've described that make them a clever choice.
Yeah, and I think that is the real struggle, isn't it? It's like it's the usual thing of in these scripts. It's what we've already talked about, but on a and what's frustrating is, so usually we assume the reason that these scripts sets up something and then doesn't do anything with it is because he's trying to cram everything in. But here's the thing: he's added himself. And he's still not paying it off and making any use of it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. This is from the trivia, but it was basically, the scene was obviously added just for the movie to serve as a representation of all of the news reports that show up sort of as they're at school in the book, scattered around the source novel about various attacks by Death Eaters on the wizarding community. It was considered to provide better pacing for the movie to actually have Harry experience one of these attacks firsthand rather than hearing/reading about them. And keeping some of the other students, or that kept happening to some of the students or their relatives. But the problem is, they just sort of show up, burn the house, and leave. They don't try to kill Harry. They don't try to kill the Weasleys. The Weasleys are part of the Order of the Phoenix. This is known. This is public. Like, at this point, they're on Dumbledore's side. Why not attempt to kill them? All right, they set up that line at the end of the movie. Don't touch Harry. He's for the Dark Lord to kill. Fine, they're not going to kill Harry. But why then attack the Burrow if your intent isn't to take out some of the opposition? What's the purpose of it? Just from a practical perspective, just think it through for a second. As a writer, what are they thinking? What's the actual plan of Bellatrix and Fenrir in this moment? To go burn down a building. Why that one? Do they know Harry's there? Is that a coincidence? Did they get lucky? Were they just burning random buildings and they stumbled across the Burrow? Unlikely. They chose it as a target. Okay, so they've chose a wizard dwelling as a target. Well, they attacked Ollivanders, took all the wands. Makes sense. Wizard war coming up. Hoard all the wands. They took the wizard that makes them too. Also smart. This makes sense to their plan. There is a plan in that. That isn't just random. There's intent, right? The movie shows it, and it's pretty good. fine, okay, I'm on board with that. But having them just randomly attack the burrow feels so contrived, unnecessary because it's never done anything with, but also it doesn't even make sense as a plan for the bad guys to have. So I remember when I first saw this movie in the theaters, just that coming out being like, what the hell was that scene? What was the point in that scene? And you're right, the book doesn't have an action beat in the middle. You want to kind of add one. I get it. Do something different. Anything different. Even better, have Harry be present. Don't do the attack on... if you want Harry to be present for one of these, have him pop to Diagon Alley in the winter break to see the Weasley shop. And have him be present for the Ollivander taking. Put that in the middle of your movie. Because the only thing that scene does, if you take that scene out of the movie, you wouldn't notice. That's what's crazy. You take that scene out of the movie, and it carries on as normal. Something that impactful should be referenced again, should put weight on the characters. Ron should be... His home has been burnt down. What's happening in the rest of the movie with him? Nothing. He's just carrying on as normal, as if that never happened. Same with Ginny. If you want that to mean anything, have any kind of fucking weight, then have it have some fucking weight. Oh, it's awful.
Because everything only relates to the scene in question that's happening, and I just think, like, yeah, it's just that's what I was going to say. Honestly, your comment of you could take that out of the movie. I think most scenes in this movie, you could take them out and it would still, do you know what I mean? You could go through scientifically and remove each scene at a time and play it to someone and they'd still understand as much as you understand at the end, apart from maybe Dumbledore's death.
And it's just a lack of understanding of like simple like characters making decisions that have meaning to the audience. So like, okay, let's look at the opening scene of the movie, or one of the opening scenes of the movie, right? Just for a quick second, just as a thought experiment, Chris. So you're watching the movie, right? And at this point, as far as you know, Snape's a good guy, yeah? As far as we know, up till Phoenix, Snape is a teacher at the school and a good guy, right? So having Snape just be like, hi Bellatrix, hi Narcissa, I'm here, and I'm a bad guy now, I guess, is very weird and confusing and jarring, and the movie acts as if this isn't new information to you. But envision a scene like this, Chris. And it's not in the book, so I'm taking a liberty here, but let's just experiment with the idea for once, right? We are in wherever Voldemort is currently holed up. There's Muggle torture happening, there's all sorts of stuff happening. They bring back Ollivander and throw him into... It can be the Malfoy Manor, it's fine, it doesn't matter. But they throw him into a cage. All of Voldemort's minions are gathering, and they're all stood around him, and they start to slowly take off their masks, and one of them is Snape. Snape is still in with Voldemort. Big reveal for the audience, right? Then they're talking about their plans and stuff. Narcissa tries to say to Voldemort, look, I understand that you want Malfoy to carry out your job this year, but I don't think he's just a boy. Is there anyone else? And then that plays into the Snape thing, and Snape can step forward and be like, or maybe they have after the meeting, Voldemort bats that away. No, he's going to do it. Punishment for Lucius's cock up at the Ministry last year. We could even establish that Lucius is in jail, because otherwise Malfoy's whole line later on of "that's for my father" kind of sits weird. But Lucius is in jail after the incident at the Ministry. Hasn't broken out yet, although he evidently will, because, Azkaban's made a Swiss cheese at the moment. Everyone's just sort of walking in and out as they please. So, you have that scene, and then afterwards, Narcissa catches up with Snape. Okay, Voldemort's not listening to me. Can you help? That way, we've actually put some dramatic weight on the fact that Snape is with the bad guys. It's a big reveal. The movie treats it as such. And we get some Voldemort being sinister in the movie. Why? Why in Christ is that not in the movie? Or something like that. Why does the movie act like Snape just being a bad guy is just normal and fine and what we knew?
Yeah, because I think there's even a world where you could make it in the books, the Unbreakable Vow is, I think, more important and does more layers and stuff in the book. Because in the book, I think most of us were still convinced he was probably a good guy, even after he kills Dumbledore, because of the Severus Please bit. But you the Unbreakable Vow is the thing that puts in you, but you don't know what it means and all that stuff. I think there's a world where you could actually take the Unbreakable Vow out of this movie, have Harry get the book, and make it about, and as they explore Voldemort more, and as they explore Tom Riddle, he maybe begins to think, is the Half-Blood Prince and Voldemort the same person? What's going on here? Who is this person? Snape appears with Dumbledore, appears to be a good guy, and then boom, at the end, Snape kills Dumbledore, and it's revealed that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince, and everything we thought and Harry thought they knew about Snape is wrong. You know what I mean? You could potentially do that.
You could make that the reveal too.
Yeah, in a world where, because the Half-Blood Prince thing is focused on for 5 minutes in this movie and then disappeared, and I think you can link it thematically into the who is Voldemort side of things, which I think is maybe what the movie should be, and you just get rid of we just don't, in a world where we haven't got the time that you've got in the books. I don't think you need Lavender Brown and Ron and Hermione. You just have Harry and cut that. Have Harry and Ginny get together. Have Ron and Hermione shoot each. What?
I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about cutting Lavender Brown. But go, Karen.
Well, you just because you don't have time for it all, do you? You have it be about Harry and Ginny, and that's love, and his love for Ginny is the reason that Harry, I don't know. I haven't thought it through, but I just think you maybe have Ron and Hermione look at each other and wish it could be them, but they don't quite have the guts to do it yet. Something else has got to go, basically. And I think just reducing some of the teenage angst stuff would be a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could sit here all day and we could speculate on what our version of it would be. But I guess the point I'm making, the old adage, the note behind the note, is that the movie doesn't even treat the Snape reveal at the beginning like a reveal. And that's, Snape working with the bad guys is new information in the movies. In the book, it's not. And it's not. So this is the problem as well. In the book, it isn't treated as a reveal because we already know Snape is a double agent because we learned that at the end of the previous movie. We haven't learned that here.
No.
So that's not been in the movies yet. So we can't even have So in the book, when that scene plays out, the Unbreakable Vow is the moment you realize Snape might really be on their side because you understand from the name what an Unbreakable Vow probably is, and him committing to helping Malfoy complete whatever his plan is, magically and in a way that seems pretty serious, like some sort of magical contract, is a big oh shit, maybe he is a double agent, but the other way around. That's the kind of, but you're not sure, but it's certainly seems that way, right? So then when the ending of the book comes and Snape's the one who kills Dumbledore, it all comes together. But you can't do that in the movies because you haven't bothered to establish that Snape is a double agent to start with. So from the perspective of somebody just watching these movies, it's oh, Snape's with the bad guys now. That's why I'm yearning for a scene where you actually make that a reveal, have all the Death Eaters show up with Voldemort and have Snape step out of the shadow as one of them. Because you haven't done the double agent thing here, so make that the twist later on, that he's a double agent, and make it just seem like he's always been on the bad guy's side. I don't see any reason why not to have that. And I don't see why they thought the way they do it was better, or even sufficient, because it's just wait, what? The whole time. And again, it's that thing where half the dialogue is missing, so most of the context is gone. Because I mean, in the book, we get all the Bellatrix sort of questioning of Snape, being unsure of Snape, and Snape giving his answers as to why he didn't, join the Dark Lord when he came back at the during Goblet of Fire. why he didn't spend all those years, trying to murder Harry. And they're all pretty good answers. Like but it goes a long way to creating more mystery around Snape. It's like this, the idea that like, oh, I actually, I thought the Dark Lord was gone, so I didn't murder my boss's favorite student. I think that's pretty reasonable in the circumstances. Why didn't I return to him during the Goblet of Fire? Well, I thought I'd be more used to him as a double agent still at Hogwarts, so I waited until it was safe for me to rejoin him later on. Like, those are good answers. It takes 20 seconds to a minute to explain. You throw in some more mystery. Either throw in more mystery or just make it so he's an outright bad guy. I don't know. It's just the characterization is all weird and wrong.
So was there meant to be a scene with dancing trolls?
Yes, there was, but not really. So basically, in the book, there's the troll tapestry that's across from. So in the last movie, they kind of made it look like the Room of Requirement like moves around. They kind of implied that a little bit with some of the shots. In the book, it's on a specific corridor in a specific location, and it's across from a tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, who tragically died trying to train trolls to do ballet. So my guess, and I couldn't find this, is that they tried to do that tapestry, like have it moving in the background. So have trolls try to dance ballet, which is a pretty cool idea. I'd have been on board with that, but yeah, it's. I don't think it makes it into the movie. So
here's and we'll get on to the lavender stuff. Although I guess what we think of it as opposed to what they could have done instead, because you're right, we could sit here all day and talk about that. But here's a question for you, Dan. Do you think it'd be reasonable to come out of these movies and think that Harry and Luna were a better couple than Harry and Ginny?
Yes.
Because when I was watching any scene with Harry and Luna together, they've got great chemistry. They really seem to care for each other. Luna's the one that finds him in the beginning, not Tonks. And like the ending, I meant to bring it up last time because I thought it would, all of their scenes in order. And especially that last scene where they find her shoes together. If you were just watching these movies, I think there's a very real possibility that you'd be like, oh, I thought Harry and Luna were going to be the thing.
Yeah, I think so. They've given them a really like soft, nice relationship, and like even that moment in this one where Luna's like, it's almost like friends, and he's like, "Well, we are friends, Luna," and she's like, "Oh, that's nice." Like it's a really sweet moment between the characters, and I like it a lot. She's great in this film. She doesn't get a lot to do, but they very wisely took Tonks out of the opening sequence with the train. They made Luna be the one that found Harry. Weird that It does feel a bit like Cloves was like, you didn't put in the Spectre specs in the last book or the Quibbler, so I'm gonna cram it in now to complete my tick box of things that should have been in the last movie. Weird.
Because
but Luna finds Harry instead, and that's fine. That's
I understand. It's. But you just haven't got the time to pay it off. Because part of me's like, does Tonks need to be in these movies then? If you're not going to do the her and Lupin thing, and my memory is they do it a bit in the seventh film, because obviously, in the books,
doesn't she call him sweetheart in this movie? Isn't the implication they're just together in this movie?
Oh, does she? I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So basically, this movie kind of sets them up as already being together, which is weird, but fine, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that is cleaner. It's that's fine. It's just one of those things where, in the books, the notion of Teddy represents Harry in the First War. We have a baby that is orphaned as a result of this horrific thing. Is so much more powerful than I can see it being in the film, because they've not really focused in on Remus and Tonks, and I just don't know whether it would therefore be more powerful if it was just Remus and it was a father figure, another father figure of Harry's has died. But then again, I mean, my memory of a lot of those deaths in the 8th movie is just like they do that scene where they walk through the hall and it's like, oh, a shitload of people are dead, so there's not much weight put on it anyway, if memory serves. But we'll get there when we get there.
To be fair though, I think some of that will be true to the book, because in the book there are some very sudden deaths with no real fanfare, no real pause to take it in. I
think that's deliberate though,
which is absolutely, it's a deliberate choice. So I think we'll see, because I don't remember, because again I've not seen this and the next two movies since the original time I saw them in the cinema. So I don't really remember. But yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it, though? It's like, you're in a weird situation where they've got it's like, yeah, you're right. If you're going to cut so much of Tonks, why have her at all? I think I do kind of agree with that. There's a certain point where you just go, does Tonks need to be in any of these now? What's Tonks' purpose? If we're, if we're not putting her in this one so much and not doing her storyline, then she doesn't need to be in the movie. She can go away. It's okay.
What were you going to say earlier about the astronomy tower scene then?
Oh, fuck. Oh, the astronomy tower scene. Okay, so I just cannot, for the life of me, understand the thinking. Because, well, no, I can. So what Clove seems to have wanted to do was to have Snape come up, interact briefly with Harry first, do the whole, I'm here to help, I'm going to go sort this out, don't worry, thing, then go up and take out Dumbledore, which is not how it happens in the book at all, but fine. I'm again, as I've said from the beginning of these, I'm okay with changes if you want to do something interesting or new with it. That's okay. And I do think that's an interesting idea. The idea that Snape would come in, take advantage of Harry's trust, be like, hey, buddy, you just chill here. Adults here, I'm going to go sort this out. That feels fine to me. The problem is that to achieve that, you have to have Harry underneath the whole scene as it plays out, where they're about to kill Dumbledore, and not do anything. He has to spend several minutes just watching on, with seemingly no agency for some reason. Like, does that sound like him to you? Does that seem like a Harry choice to you? Do you not think he would run out there and try to save Dumbledore, do something, instead of just standing there gawking, like, watching it play out? It's so frustratingly weird, because... And again, in the book, he's frozen in place with the invisibility cloak on him. He can't do anything. In fact, Dumbledore sacrifices his last chance to defend himself against Draco, freezing Harry in place. So Draco comes out and does Expelliarmus on Dumbledore. Dumbledore is quicker with his wand than Draco, but instead of blocking that, saving himself, he uses it to freeze Harry in place. Because Dumbledore knows he has to die at this point. And he knows, and he wants Snape to do it to save Malfoy having that mark on his soul.
Yeah.
And that's all potentially here in this version of the events, except we don't... Draco does just disarm the greatest wizard ever, blah, 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 without the explanation as to why, although you can kind of say he's weakened from his fight with the Inferi and the potion. I don't know. He seemed pretty powerful when he did all those giant flames, so it's kind of hard to believe that this child disarmed him, but whatever. He catches him off guard. I don't know.
Well,
but then it's Harry not doing anything that's the other problem. Why does Harry just sit there and watch this all play out? I don't understand.
What I quite liked about that interpretation of specifically the Expelliarmus thing is... and the trouble is, I doubt this is going to be explained properly in the next two films. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, it feels like what they've done there. Because Dumbledore even says something like, I'll make it easy for you. And then Draco says Expelliarmus. You almost go, does Dumbledore know that this is going to give Harry a chance ultimately to maybe... take over the power of the Elder Wand? Probably not, because it would make more sense for that power to die with Dumbledore, wouldn't it? So he'd know that instead. But anyway, so I didn't know if that bit specifically was connected to that. I completely agree with you, because the trouble is, yeah, you've got the Snape moment and the verbatim switch, but if you do it closer to how it is in the book, you've still got the Snape stuff. You literally, 30 seconds before Dumbledore dies, have Dumbledore saying... Severus is who I need. You know, if you just make it, you could even change it so it's Severus is the one I trust, and then to make the action more, and to make the actions of Harry more realistic to the character we've seen in these movies, you have him be, you know, attached to the wall and unable to move or whatever. I suppose he's not in an invisibility cloak, maybe that's the problem. But I think you'd still get that moment of, oh, fucking hell, with Snape, because you've just heard Dumbledore talk about how much he trusts him. You know, you don't need to have him shush Harry. It's powerful, but I think, as you say, it does more damage to Harry's character than it does benefit the scene.
And I know it's like you cut away from the moment to come back to it, but all right, Malfoy comes in and disarms Dumbledore, but instead of doing nothing, Harry leaves to go get Snape and bumps into him downstairs. And Snape's like, oh, Harry's like, Dumbledore needs you, he's in trouble. And Snape's all like, good, come on, Potter. And he goes up, and then he goes, wait here. And then Snape goes up, and Harry thinks, phew, an adult here to save the day. I'll wait safely as I've been instructed by the adult. That's fine. And then Snape does the murder, and it's like Harry brought Snape to Dumbledore. He's even you could put some responsibility on Harry. Then it's not the same as it played out in the book, but it allows you to have the bait and switch moment and explain why Harry isn't immediately trying to save Dumbledore. Because his plan to save Dumbledore is to go get an adult, which is fine. I don't think it's against his character to seek help. I just think it's against his character to do nothing. Right, like that's my issue. It's completely, he's actionless in this moment, and I just don't feel like. Then again, Dumbledore and Voldemort were fighting in the last movie. Harry stood around like a lemon and watched on anyway. So maybe actually it is very much in his character. I don't know, letting other wizards do the work, I guess. But in the graveyard, he was a man of action, right? Like at the end of Goblet. So I just find it hard to believe he would just sit there and watch all this slowly play out when he knows that Malfoy's intention is to murder Dumbledore. I cannot understand how you would think that was good writing,
especially after you literally have Draco say that's the intention, and Draco disarms Dumbledore. You think Harry would then go,
no,
right, well, and he's not got a wand,
right,
and jump in, yeah,
because Harry can. That's the thing is, it's a little, At first, Draco's on his own, right? I can't remember exactly how it plays out, but if memory serves, and I only watched this movie like 2 hours ago, and it's already seeping out of my brain. That tells you the quality of this movie. But Draco initially is on his own and is then joined by a couple of like Death Eaters, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, he's on his own, and then he's joined by Bellatrix Greyfair, however you say his
Greyback,
name.
yeah, Fenrir Greyback, yeah. So before Bellatrix and Greyback show up, and after Draco confirms his plan is to murder Dumbledore, that's a great moment for Harry to try and jump in. Just Malfoy. Harry's pretty confident he can take on Malfoy. He's done it before. He literally attacked him for way less reason about 20 minutes ago in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He attacked him on a hunch about 2 hours ago. Not 2 hours ago, in school time, a couple days ago, Why do you think? What's your evidence of Mr. Malfoy being at the heart of this conspiracy? I don't know. I just think it because the writer forgot to put in any of the actual evidence. So I'm forced to just say my reasons for thinking it's him is that I think it's him. Fine.
It's so annoying, isn't it? Because again, that scene is the scene with Draco and Harry in the toilets is not given the depth it's got, in the text, and I just think it's an obvious thing to cut. Except it's like it's one of the few things this movie does to tie anything back to the flipping Half-Blood Prince.
Right, and that's the problem. It's like it's all just pieces of the thing without a view on a whole, and that's another indicative moment because here we go. We got two scenes. Again, back to your original point, Chris. Of all the scenes are only relevant to the scene they're in. We see Harry on a hunch chase Malfoy into a toilet and then attack him because he's so convinced he's up to evil. Yet Malfoy goes in and disarms Dumbledore, and Harry doesn't immediately launch at Malfoy. It just doesn't make sense. It just practically doesn't make sense. So, big L. Big L. I do think the death itself is reasonably dramatic, although I will say, I don't mean to criticize Alan Rickman here, but I don't love Alan Rickman's performance in that moment. I think he puts too much sorrow into Dumbledore, into Snape's face as he pulls the trigger, so to speak. I think there's way too much regret and dismay on his expression. I think he should look cold and calculated, and like it was that like killing Dumbledore is absolutely the plan, because it is in both senses. And I think the film version of it gives the game away, because spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know, Dumbledore does die at the hands of Snape, but it was a plan all along. Dumbledore arranged that death because he was dying anyway from an injury from the ring. the Horcrux he got. So he basically says to Snape, "You take my life to save Malfoy," scarring his soul so thoroughly, and you won't scar your soul so much doing it because you'll be doing it to save me from Fenrir, who in Dumbledore's words likes to play with his food, which is a brutal way to phrase it.
They also give the game away with the scene in the astronomy tower before Harry and Dumbledore go off to the cave, where they're arguing about what Dumbledore is asking Snape to do. Now that he's like, "You can't make me go back," and he's like, "You have to." And it's not overtly about his death or anything, but it is just why are you reminding in a moment where you want the audience to think Dumbledore has turned? Why have you put a random scene reminding that he is a double agent and Dumbledore's asking him to do stuff he doesn't want to do? Why is that scene there?
I almost forgot that scene was there. Yeah, and that muddies the water even more. Yeah, this is a bad movie. These are bad movies. It's a bad movie. Well, I will say, so to your point from earlier, though, I don't think you would cut the Ron Lavender Brown stuff. I don't think. I think that stuff is probably only some of the stuff that works in the film. Like, I think Ron Lavender Brown's the only actual relationship that gets the time to be both begun, gotten a middle, and an end. Like, it's the only complete storyline in this whole damn movie. So I'd be sad to lose it for that reason alone.
Yeah, but what does it add? Like, do you know what I mean? The fact that it's not as ropey as the rest of the movie. What does it add?
I think it does add to the Harry story if you execute that part correctly. Of teenagers be teenagers, and then reality hits Dumbledore's death. All their big... Right, basically, I think the idea... What I would be doing if I was doing the script is using the Lavender Brown storyline, the Harry Ginny storyline, the Ginny Dean sort of situation, to basically tell the story of them realizing that their problems are dumb teenage problems, and the real world is the scary. Like, they're worried about who they're going out with and all this stuff, but then we're seeing all this stuff in the papers that they're almost ignoring about the wizarding world, and you have that be the premise of the movie is that, like I said, at the end, that all comes crashing down. They feel safe at Hogwarts, out of sight, out of mind. They carry on with their lives. The lesson of the movie, or the theme of the movie, is those teenage dreams basically being shattered by reality when Death Eaters breach the school. So if you're going to do that, you need... I think not need, but it benefits from all the love triangles and silly teenage stuff, because it's like this is the movie that brings them down to earth and makes them go, oh shit, there's actually like way more important things to worry about than any of this, than any of our teen bullshit. So I still my quote unquote my version of the movie doesn't cut Lavender Brown, because while you're right, she is cuttable, I think there are other things more cuttable. I don't think you need Felix Felicis, because if you're not going to explain Felix Felicis properly, then it's game breaking. Because for the rest of these movies, a person who's not read the books would be going, why don't you just take some Felix Felicis before you fight this person? Why don't you just take some Felix Felicis before you do this? Slughorn said it was difficult to make, but polyjuice potion is difficult to make. They've made tons of that in the past. It's never really been a barrier. They had a whole villain that did a whole plot involving drinking a shit ton of polyjuice potion, and that was supposed to be really difficult to brew. So just everyone make some Felix Felicis. Then we'll convene in a few months when we've all made some, and we'll all drink it, and then we'll go out to try and kill Voldemort, and we'll all just, with clairvoyance, find him and succeed, because we'll succeed in all our endeavors.
For that?
Now, in the book,
remember.
What's that, sorry?
I was just asking you what the book explanation for that is. I can't remember.
So in the book, if it's made wrong, it can pretty much kill you, I think, for a start. Right. But two, you can only use it a couple of times in a lifetime. You can't use it more than I think twice, I think he says. But also, what's the other? There's 3 things in the book that kind of make it like why you don't just make a fucking giant vat of it. What's the third reason? Oh yeah, because I think too much of it drives you mad, I think, and stops working how it's supposed to. Made wrong, it can kill you. What's the other thing? I feel like there's 3 reasons in the book given for why Felix Felicis you can't just. Oh, it has to be taken on an ordinary day. You can't use it to go do an exam or or a sporting event or anything. It has to. The whole premise of Philosopher is to turn an ordinary day into an extraordinary day, not to be used to make an important day a win, basically. Right. And I don't know if that means it doesn't necessarily work when you try to use it that way or what, but it's laid out kind of vaguely like that. But if you're going to put it in this movie and not give us any single caveat as to why it's not just being made en masse for armies on both sides, like it was such an insanely powerful piece of magic. And the movie puts no restrictions on it whatsoever. So I'm going to spend the next 2 movies going, well, in the movie world, why aren't they all just taking this all the time?
Well, while we're on that scene, so in a section I like to call "Let's try and find some compliments," as previously stated, Daniel Radcliffe is phenomenal in that scene. Yes. His acting is so good. The pincers thing is hilarious. Mm-hmm. You must understand, I can't let you go out into the grounds on your own. Well, then come with me. It's all
almost
so
like
good.
Annoyance. Like, well, then come on, what are you doing? If you're not letting me go on my own, you better get your move on. I'm heading out.
So well done. And in the scene where Slughorn gives up the memory, and in general throughout this entire movie, Jim Broadbent is brilliant. Like yes. He's not at all what I pictured when I read the character, but he does it so well. He's really fantastic as Slughorn. And actually, to pay it another compliment, his introductory scene is some of the most Dumbledore like Michael Gambon is.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's perfect still, but it is amongst his best work as well.
I would agree. I think I feel if I'm throwing some compliments for the movie, I think this is barely a compliment. It's a bit of a backhanded and stuff, but this is probably his best performance as Dumbledore, like the closest he gets to getting it right through these movies. It's definitely still not there, but it is way closer, way closer. There's no shouldn't you be studying moment in this movie where Dumbledore just does something insanely out of character.
But also the script still does, because the should you be studying moment, I still blame the script more than Gambon. But yes. But it still has some bizarre script decisions. No. Dumbledore would never ask Harry if he's seeing Hermione. But also,
I've got a note about that as well. What? That's such a weird, awkward moment. Dumbledore trying to make chit-chat with Harry and realising that he just doesn't know him well at all.
It's so out of character, but also it's so weird. But just the notion as well. You want Dumbledore to be the character that sees all the pieces before the pieces have even been cut, and you want Dumbledore to be the character that looks at Ron and Hermione and knows they're probably in love. Like, do you know what I mean? You want him to be able to see things and not be so oblivious as to ask Harry whether there's anything going on between him and Hermione, let alone how out of fucking character it is.
Yeah, and then the weird fear-mongering at the start of the movie as well, which is, again, a script thing, not a Gambon performance thing. Like, who are you, Dumbledore? Fox News? He literally says the quote, and I've wrote it down, Chris. Dark forces are within these walls. He says that to the school at the start of year feast. What? What are you doing? You trying to terrify these children?
It's so weird.
What's the purpose?
And there's just a lot of I'm more
so
than the
It's
other.
not exclusive to Dumbledore though, acting out of character. Like, there's a weird point early in the movie where. In the book, Harry and Ron and Hermione do see Draco and Narcissa head off down Nocturne Alley and into Borgin and Burkes, but they don't really know what it is they're doing. Oh no, sorry, Draco. The reason they follow Draco is because he gets away from his mum to sneak off down Nocturne Alley, and they find that suspicious, so they follow him. They see he goes into Borgin and Burkes, but they don't see what he does in there. So when Harry jumps to I think Draco is now a Death Eater. Ron and Hermione rightly go, that's a bit of a leap, mate. But in the movie, they all three of them, see him go in, stroke the cabinet. Fenrir Greyback is there. Like, it's way less of a jump. And yet they still keep in the scene where Hermione and Ron look at each other like, yeah, right. Like, you all saw that, right? He stroked a cabinet. It was kind of weird.
Ron's like, he's just into cabinets, Harry.
So it's not just Dumbledore that acts out of character in this movie, but I will say, this is definitely Michael Gambon's least offensive turn as the character. It's much closer, it's much softer. He's brought the energy down a bit. Maybe someone between movies told him. I don't know, but it's certainly the closest we get to a good Dumbledore performance from him. This one, so I guess that is something. I mean, I guess if we're doing compliments as well, the Katie Bell curse scene, while the setup isn't handled very well, and it's a bit confusing, and I think to an audience they'd be a bit confused as to what actually just happened. I don't think they explain what's going on very well. But the actual imagery of her body getting dragged around and then up into the air is horrible. Like, it's really unpleasant to watch. Like, they've done a very good job making that seem deeply unpleasant as a moment, so I liked that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and kind of equally, I don't like the weird black and white thing. I don't like the way what's going on isn't really explained, and I definitely don't like the way that Dumbledore is just sort of screaming in pain. And I like the way Dumbledore's begging, which is from the books, but obviously in the books there's dialogue that hints at sort of the Grindelwald and his past situation. But despite all of that, actually the scene in the cave is incredibly atmospheric. The colours need to be changed, but the acting and the atmosphere
I don't mind the colours in the cave, because the cave is like a weird dark magic lockbox. Like it's an escape room, built into a cave. I'm fine with that place being so thick with Voldemort's like magical protection that it all discolors and looks weird in there. You know what? Fine, tick. That can look exactly as it does now. It's the rest of the movie where they're just in the school like normal, and yet it's got that filter over it that I'm just scratching my head going, why?
I do like I agree with that, and the flames and all of that stuff is done very well. The visuals of Dumbledore firing those flames at everyone and Harry coming up from the water, all of that stuff is very atmospheric and done very well. There's so much in terms of the cave thing. There was another example I noticed, but I couldn't think of it. This film has so many examples of this doesn't make any logical sense, but the visual will be cool, so let's do that. And the cave one is one of my favourites, because they should have obviously evaporated in front of the entrance to the fucking cave, as opposed to a big rock sticking out of the sea with waves. Like, how are they? There must be an uncut scene in this movie where Harry turns to Dumbledore and go, "Are we going through all that water?" Like, because it looks pretty, and he's, "Oh yeah, no, we need to evaporate again, but evaporate on that rock, not this rock." And it's just such an example of, well, it's going to look cool visually if they're on a rock facing the caves and there's loads of water in between and it's Harry and Dumbledore. And it is a cool visual, but it's fucking weird. It's superfluous. Like, it's only there to be a cool visual. Bellatrix Lestrange, she's a big villain. You've got the Molly Weasley moment in the next film. She's killed Sirius. Harry's going to be angry at her. I have no objections to her being added to the end. But is she really going to, when they're running away and need to get out of all this danger, going to stop to fucking kick over some glass in the Great Hall? Like, there's just so many examples of... but it would be a cooler
I'm okay
visual.
with that one. All of your other examples, I was like, yeah, this just doesn't need to be there. But, oh, God, I did love... Because with the movie version of Bellatrix is, like, really annoying, kind of like Tim Burton-esque character. She's, like, crazy, But if you're going to do that character, that kind of just unbridled, unnecessary chaos works with her and her alone.
To be honest with you,
she's the only character you could get away with that with, where like the idea of just having a bit of fun and trashing the Great Hall, because she went to school there too, right? Like, I've got visions of her as a teen wishing the opportunity to destroy that school and destroy parts of that school, and then on their way out, her just passing the doors to the Great Hall and going, "Oh, you know what? I always wanted to do." Just going in.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, mate. I couldn't think offhand of another example of that worse than The Rock, so I was stretching at claws there, because I actually don't mind that scene either. Because also you need a runaway action beat for the end, because you've obviously sort of paused everything to do Dumbledore to do Dumbledore dying. But there are definitely other examples of this movie just having visuals for the sake of visuals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, even the bridge, the beginning, which is kind of in the book. So in the book, there's a description from Fudge to the actual sort of Muggle Prime Minister. And they're talking about something called, I think they call it the Brockdale Bridge, and it's basically a bridge that collapsed, and it was a big scandal because, you know, it was a reasonably new bridge, and it was like government, the Muggles were blaming the government for not, you know, either looking after the bridge or not noticing design flaws in the bridge. But when Fudge shows up and explains, actually, that was our people just using it as an excuse to kill Muggles. It's, you know, that's what's going on. It's like, you think this is, you know, rusty rigging or whatever, but actually this was on our side. You know, that tornado in the West Country wasn't a tornado, it was a troll attack, you know, trees torn up and all that stuff, or sorry, giant attack. So there is a bridge that gets destroyed that's referenced in the book. It's never seen or shown. I think it's fine to throw it in as a way to demonstrate the Death Eaters just, you know, causing chaos. But if you're skipping out the context of what they actually think happened, there's a part of you that just goes, do Muggles just know now? Like, just, what happened? Well, I was on the bridge, and then a bunch of weird, spooky shadow things swept around it, exploded it, and then a big skull formed in the clouds. Like, no, like, you could walk away from this movie going, Muggles just know about magic now, right? Like, they seem pretty open about it. So yeah, but again, cool visual for the sake of a cool visual, right? And that one, at least you could try and explain it as, oh, they were trying to get in more evidence of the damage being done to the wider world. But yeah, it's like they've gone too big because there's a part of you that just wonders how much do the Muggles know. That,
as I said earlier, I think that is a great idea executed badly, because and they've even got it in the movie, man. You have, if you want to do, although I hate it, if you want to start for some reason with Harry riding round the London Underground all summer, fine, and you want to start with him hitting on a waitress, the waitress says, oh, do they have any more updates in there about that bridge that collapsed? Like, you just start that conversation with that. To justify that visual and explain that, you know, the Muggles don't know it's you know, wizards. They think it's a hurricane or something like that. Instead of this fucking bizarre who's Harry Potter nonsense. But that scene in general can just go,
yeah. I tell you as well, if we're paying compliments, I thought the memory altered version of the Horcrux scene was handled really well, because having the sound dip out is something that only happens in the movie version, not the book version. But it's a really smart idea, because in the book, Harry and Hermione, you know, and Ron, well, Ron's off with Lavender at that point, so it's mostly Harry and Hermione. You know, they go off and they're like trying to research what a Horcrux is for a bit, but having the word kind of muted stops you from needing to do that. And that's probably clever and saves some time. And also it makes you almost like, it's like that thing of when, you know, when someone talks quite quietly, it forces you to listen, it forces you to draw in and really take in the words. It's kind of like a movie equivalent of that. By having the word Horcrux removed, your intrigue is piqued. You kind of lean in a little, like, what's going on? Well, you know, so the handling of the altered version of Slughorn's memory before we get the real one is pretty good.
Visually as well, in general, the way they go into memories in this movie, the way they form around them with kind of the smoke and stuff, right, is very good. It looks great every time they go into a memory. It's a really cool visual effect.
Yeah, I would agree. And I like that they managed to do, you know, Harry chooses to like mimic Tom Riddle when he approaches Slughorn as almost like a I know what you did sort of thing. It's pretty. It works well in the movie, I think. It's one of the scenes that I kind of liked. Let me ask you a question, Chris. Does this movie do enough to explain what a Horcrux is?
I think it's quite a simple answer, Dan. And I think that answer's no. No, I don't think so. Because there's no point. because basically, the trouble is I'm distracted by how annoyed I was that Harry touched the ring and there's that leaves traces shit. But I don't think this movie... I think it probably explains what a Horcrux is, because the Slughorn Tom Riddle scene is very good at the basis of that. I don't think the movie does enough to go, Voldemort definitely did this, and the Horcruxes are out there, and the mission is now to find the Horcruxes. The scene at the end where Harry's like, doesn't even matter anyway, there's this note, and we see the note. That's where the confusing stuff is. So, what is a Horcrux? Yes, quite succinctly explained. What that means for any of this, nope, not explained very well. Would be the conclusion I think I'd draw.
Yeah, so again, it's like it's there in a big enough way to like physically explain the setup for the next sequence. They're acquiring one of these objects, but yeah, the lack of context that gives you the wider sort of like setup for later on. They just these films aren't very efficient, because you could set that up there and save yourself a lot of time in the next movie. Because presumably in the next movie they're going to take some time to cover Horcruxes again, to sort of fill in some of the gaps we currently have. And you could have just saved some time in the next movie by doing it here, but hey-ho.
And it's the thing with the books, because I must admit, and I'm going to pay attention to this when I get to read the Half-Blood Prince, because even in the books it's a little bit like Dumbledore destroyed the ring, So Dumbledore must have a hunch. Does he need the Slughorn memory to confirm the number of Horcruxes Voldemort is likely to have tried to create?
He needs the Slughorn memory for two things. One, to confirm Horcruxes was... Because he suspected there were Horcruxes. Yeah, it's mostly the number, but he also wants to confirm... Because he doesn't have any proof that Voldemort was looking into Horcruxes. So that memory is essential for proving that point. But in the meantime, he actually goes and finds... The ring is the worst hidden, I think, because it's literally in the Marvolo Gaunt's shack, which is like just, the most obvious place he could have left it, hoping it would just be forgotten to time, which makes sense, but also, like, if anyone at all figured out your parentage, they were going to go looking there, to be honest. But I guess Voldemort's arrogance is he didn't even think people would assume he made Horcruxes. So, so it's mostly to confirm, because Dumbledore already suspects that he... Because there's a line in one of them about how he's gone beyond... Yeah, I think Dumbledore says to Harry, my biggest clue to what was going on was when you came back from the grave and told me that Voldemort had said, I who have gone further than any wizard before to becoming immortal, or something like that. And that's Dumbledore's first clue that he didn't just make a Horcrux, but he may have made several. And then it's confirming the exact number, I guess, is the main goal of the thing. Because when he finishes that memory, that's when him and Harry finally sit down and figure out what they think the 7 are. So we already have the diary and the ring. What's left? Well, Dumbledore theorizes that Voldemort's quite close to that snake, and then they start looking at other objects from Founders, because the ring belonged to Salazar Slytherin. So they start doing the cup, the locket, things like that, and that's when they start working their way through. The ring wasn't Slytherin's, was it? It was a Marvolo family heirloom, but they're related to the... I think they were related to the Slytherins if you go back far enough, something like that. Mm. Yeah. So that's one of those things where, like, that's a big part of the book. Sorry, that was a way too long of an answer.
No. I think in answer to your question, that's, you come out of this movie knowing what Horcrux is. I don't think you come out of this movie quite knowing why it's so important. And
that's the thing is, again, we need, but here we need, the whole purpose of this movie should be to set up the stakes. So if you're explaining what it is, but not taking the time to set up the stakes correctly, well, then what's the point? Like, there are no stakes for your next movie.
Speaking of setup, then, so this movie's got a challenge with the book, because the book obviously deals with a shitload of Voldemort, because the book is, I think there's 7 or something memories of Voldemort that we explore throughout the entire book. So the book feels very Voldemort heavy. Now, you don't have time to do all of those memories. So, bearing in mind the challenge they had, do you think this film does enough given where Order of the Phoenix ended and where Deathly Hallows has to go, to truly remind and set up Voldemort as the villain. Because obviously, Ralph Fiennes, adult Voldemort, there ain't a lot of him, if any. Is there any? I can't really remember. Is there? Genuine question. Is he in this movie?
No, he isn't, is he?
I don't think he is.
We don't even get the glimpse of him. We don't even get the glimpse of him in the suit. The image from the last movie recurring. No.
Finds in Half-Blood Prince.
No, he's not in the movie.
Double check that.
And to clarify, by the way, so I just done the math. I think there are 6 memories in the book. There's Bob Ogden's memory of the Gaunts. There's Dumbledore's memory of meeting Riddle. There's Morphine Gaunt's memory of Voldemort coming back. We get both the fake and the normal version of Slughorn's memory. And then we get the memory of Hokey, the house elf. That's 5. Hokey, the house elf, is the one who sees Hepzibah Smith, I think her name is, with Hufflepuff's cup. And then the 6th one is the final Dumbledore memory of Voldemort having been out and about, becoming Voldemort, returning to the school, and it's the pretense he wants the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, but really what he's doing is he's hiding the tiara, the Ravenclaw's, the diadem, somewhere in the school. So the 6 memories, not all of them 100% Voldemort related. Like the Hepzibah Smith one is with Hokey. Actually, no, they all are technically. No, all of them. Yeah, so they're all Voldemort. So there's 6 memories total. 7 if you split in Horace's into 2 because it's a fake and a real one.
So, what do you think of my question? So, do you think there's enough Voldemort? Bearing in mind the challenges of that, do you think there's enough Voldemort in this movie?
No, I don't think there is. But I would say that it would not be unreasonable for someone to say that's kind of the point. Like he's, it's now about a brewing wizarding war. He's the head of that other side. But we'll set up tension by saying that the world is going to shit around them. But the problem is we don't really do that either. So so if you're not showing Voldemort because you've not got the flashbacks through the memories, and you're not really getting as much time to see the wider wizarding world at war now, bar a few references in the opening scene, you're doing neither. You need to be at least doing one of those, I think. You can get away with less Voldemort if you've got more, the wider world is falling apart. But they don't have that either. So the answer is very much a firm no.
So do you have any other kind of bigger points before we do questions, or are you ready to do questions?
I got a couple of quick ones. I just enjoyed that we got another reference to Seamus blowing himself up. I think that's fun. Harry, maybe hide your wizard paper, you reckless asshat. You're in the Muggle world. Don't just be openly reading the Daily Prophet. Just weird. We've already talked about that. They don't clarify what collecting people really means initially to Slughorn, which makes the whole thing seem a little sinister. I don't necessarily mind it being sinister, because it might come across as another example of Dumbledore putting Harry in the line of fire when he's like, do you want me to let him collect me, sir? And he's like, yes, I do. That seems weird. Later on it becomes less weird when we realise what collecting him really means is just kind of befriending him. But in the moment, it's weird. I have noted down the Snape asking Harry what is evidence to suspect Malfoy of Katie's cursing, and Harry's response, which I've written down in quote marks, I just know. Brilliant. He doesn't bother adding, I saw him in Hogsmeade right before Katie got the necklace. I think he went into the same room she was in first, which is, would have been maybe more so, but fine. The nice skin scene, I like that scene a lot. That's really funny and weird, but I love it. I don't know if you recall.
Yeah, I think
that
it's
one.
a nice example of two teenage boys talking about women but not knowing how to talk about their feelings, and just kind of it's actually quite good writing in that scene. They are saying so much more than the words coming out of their mouth, which feels very true to kind of teenage life.
Yes.
So yeah, I thought that scene was all right.
Yeah. Let's see. We already talked about that. Oh, I really enjoyed that they showed us Harry taking Luna to Slughorn's party, but I really, really loved that Neville was a waiter at the party. I don't believe that's in the book at all, and it's brilliant. It's so good. Because I think in the book, Neville is part of the Slug Club because his parents were successful aurors, I think.
I think so, yeah. Maybe his herbology sort of talents as well, but I can't remember.
Right. I made a note about the actress playing Lavender Brown. I think she's very good, particularly the scene in the train when she manically draws the heart on the thing with her breath. Absolutely insane in the best way. So, 10 points. The movie chose to introduce the Vanishing Cabinet and explain what it was way earlier than the book does. The book kind of keeps that a mystery as to what Malfoy's up to inside the room of requirement. I think that's better in the film. That they explain it. I like all the little weird scenes of Malfoy trying to get it working throughout the movie. They don't. Some people have criticized it for affecting the pacing. I don't think it affects the pacing. I think it's fine. We see him testing it with an apple. We see him testing it with a bird. Then we have them seeing it later. It works. I think it's a perfectly well set up and paid off mystery for me.
Yeah, I think it's attempting to embed something throughout it into the entire movie, which is a good thing. And actually, Tom, I mean, genuinely, I think everyone's acting is very good in this movie, especially given what they're given. But Tom Felton is particularly good in this movie as well. It's probably his best work so far. His performance at Draco is very villainous, but also you can see that conflict in him, which is quite nice, because that was sort of, to be honest with you, only ever hinted at in the books. And I think if you're going to end things where they end things for Harry and Draco, you maybe need to hint at it a little more. So.
Well, I think in the books they do it, but they just do it in the final book. It's definitely not in Half-Blood Prince. In Half-Blood Prince, the weight on him is there, but it's more fear about being basically murdered by Voldemort for getting this wrong, or being killed in the line of trying to do it. So it's not that he's doubting his actions. It's more they set it up that that he's fearing for his life throughout this process, because this book does a really good job of describing that he looks gaunt and he starts to look paler as the year goes on. His hair less kempt. We get hints of him crying in the toilets. It's all very he's been crying in the toilets for weeks. Myrtle tells Harry, there's a lot of that in the book, but it's not so much about him having doubts and more about him feeling the pressure of the task that's been given to him, and it's done really well, and it's handled reasonably well here. I think he does look stressed, and he's having less fun as he swaggers around the school and stuff, and I'm on board with that. I like that. I think it works, and particularly that he's already crying when Harry gets to the bathroom means we can cut Myrtle out of the movie, which is a blessing.
Yeah, I think that was wise.
Yeah, I don't know. It is. What do you say, Chris? It's clear where Sectum Sempra comes from, because they make a whole dramatic thing about Harry getting rid of the book after Sectum Sempra, but I don't think the film makes it very clear that's where Sectum Sempra came from, and that there's a chance the book might be evil in some way. I don't know if the movie does that.
I think there's a shot. I'm pretty sure there's a shot of the book with the spell focused in on.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
That's enough to reinforce it, you think?
Yeah, I think so. And does Snape reference it at the end? That I can't remember.
No, he does say stop using my own spells against me. I am the Half-Blood Prince, but he doesn't specifically say that one.
Yeah. Hold on. I think I might have the. So it zooms in on the book. Oh no, this is where it's. To be fair, It's well, unless it zooms in at another point. The bit I've got it zooming in on here, it zooms by it very quickly and sort of basically keeps zooming in on the pages. And in one of the pages, it says "Set to sing for my enemy." So that potentially isn't enough. Whether maybe because there's that ridiculous Harry and Ginny hiding the book bit after it, isn't there?
Yep.
So whether it's said in dialogue in that bit, when Hermione says you've got to get rid of the book. Yeah, I don't know.
It just feels like they cut all the conversations around it to try and be like more dramatic and more filmic. So there's none of the actual expositional dialogue that explains it, and instead it's just like understood. Oh, the book's evil now, so let's have a big dramatic scene where you're forced to put it away, and Ginny's gonna hide it from you, and then they're gonna do some kissing practice. Just have a bit of kissing. Just that's the time. That's the moment.
Oh, it's so badly like the Harry. Yeah, just we've already done it, but Harry and Ginny's just done so much better in the book.
I haven't put this isn't my notes, but what do we think of the Ron Quidditch stuff and Cormac McLaggen? That's handled okay, right? That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's even made more of a it's brought in earlier in the film than it is in the book. This notion that Hermione also has someone after her. Yeah, that stuff's fine because that stuff's just mainly played for laughs and works. And I think the Quidditch, I think at this point to really appreciate in the world that Quidditch is this huge thing. I think you do need Quidditch. You can make an argument that other than, I guess, finally prompting Ron and Lavender, it doesn't propel the plot much. But I think it's important, that you're not going to do Quidditch in the next film. You haven't really done Quidditch properly for a while. Chuck it in, yeah. So I think it's done well. And Rupert Grint, again, the acting is really good in this movie. Rupert Grint on the broom when he thinks he's had the good luck potion is fantastic. And Emma Watson's smile in spite of herself at him being proud and confident is also very good. So
yeah, and I like that they introduced Cormac because it does set up that because she does take Cormac to Slughorn's party to annoy Ron in the book, so that's sets him up as well. The only thing I will say about that is if the film version is to be believed, her high and mightiness, based on just the film, her high and mightiness at Harry quote unquote using Felix Felicis for Ron is pretty shitty when you think about her Confundus charm, whereas in the book her Confundus charm is framed a bit more as her saving Harry from having to put Cormac on the team, because Cormac is clearly going to be a problem for the team, just because he's arrogant and thinks he would run it better than Harry. He actually costs them a match where instead of watching the goals, he goes over to start showing one of the beaters how to do it. Takes the bat off them and starts demonstrating, and while that's happening there's goals being scored, and then while Harry's distracted trying to tell Cormac to get back to the bloody rings, Harry gets clocked by a bludger. So in the book it's and that's the reason that match happens with Cormac is because because obviously Ron is injured from his love potion mishap, so Cormac has to sub in for him. But basically in the book, Hermione's Confundus spell is framed as saving Harry a lot of hassle with someone they already know is going to be a nightmare on the team, whereas in the movie she's purely doing it to help Ron, because otherwise Cormac's the better player. The movie frames him as the better player. Harry would want Cormac on the team, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a bit confused, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I've made a note here about them never actually splitting up Ginny and Dean. It's weird. Don't like it. Don't like that they don't have Ron acknowledge that relationship and sign off on it, sort of like they do in the book. Because they do the setup. Once again, setup with no payoff. They have the Ron saying, she's my sister. I don't want to see no boys with their hands over her. They don't then pay it off with when Harry gets together with her, Harry almost looking for Ron's approval. Weird.
Yeah, I dislike that one because, like you say, set up without payoff more than Ginny and Dean in a way, because we do know that they're, Hermione does say they've been fighting again. We know things aren't between them.
Doesn't that just feel like a line just thrown in as an afterthought because they realised they didn't do it? It's like one line of dialogue.
Yeah, I agree, but my thing with that is just get rid of Ginny and Dean, full stop, and have it be more about Harry and Ginny. So
sure, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no reason to put that obstacle in between them. Because you're not going to do the other plot of Ron being annoyed at Ginny for publicly snogging, which then becomes a point when he gets with Lavender that she calls him a hypocrite. So that if you're not putting any of that in, then there's really no reason. We've covered this one. No, all this stuff at the end, we've covered. Oh, one last little note. We do see very clearly they put a lot of prominence on the Elder Wand. I guess because at this point the final book was out, they were able to do that. You know, Harry, it's on Dumbledore's desk, and Harry's like looking at it and interacting with it. A bit weird because we know that's going to end up in the tomb with Dumbledore. Weirdly, they don't set that up because they don't do the funeral, right?
I don't believe so. No. Hold on.
So wait, so they already know that in the next movie they need to have Voldemort like opening up the tomb and retrieving the wand, and they don't bother showing it being put there in this one. That'd take like 2 seconds to do that shot, would it not?
Yeah, but equally, I must admit, my memory of Harry like seeing the wand on the desk, I didn't think that was after his death. Is it?
It is after his death, yeah.
Right. Okay. Then yeah, that is weird. Then that they don't set it up.
That is weird. All right, fair enough. Whatever.
I thought it went straight from.
No, because it's the scene where he's in Dumbledore's office looking
right.
at the wand, and then McGonagall comes in and they have a little chat.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's so weird. And McGonagall says, "I better take that. We got to stick it in the coffin, mate."
Yeah, Harry, hand that to me. Wait, Harry, what are you doing with that? The funeral's happening right now. We're about to steal the coffin. He's supposed to be buried with that. Give it here, dickhead. And then off she goes. So let's should we do Triv then rankings?
We got to do questions.
Oh, the questions, of course, the questions. Sorry, yes. We've covered a lot of this stuff, so the questions will probably go through quite quick this week. So I think we've been doing this as we've gone with this one. Does it work as a story on its own? Yeah,
it does.
It does.
It does function.
Yeah, the sequence of events are logical. There isn't a lot of narrative payoff, but the narrative does function. So
it's amazing. It's amazing how much all of these have actually functioned. Since Azkaban, I think is arguably the worst for. The others. I can understand people being confused about choices, being confused about reasoning, being confused about confused about details.
Someone has started like mowing the lawn or something like right outside our window, or like start. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna go. Go. The window was open, which I was relieved with, but now I have to go close it. Sorry, you carry on to finish your point, and I'll go do that.
I can understand, but I can understand people being confused about nuances, but actually only Azkaban do I think Azkaban would someone come out of being really confused about what the fuck just happened. And this, Goblet of Fire maybe a bit as well.
Azkaban is an Azkaban themed restaurant. The waiters dress as Dementors.
But in terms of Order of Phoenix and this, what actually happens, ABC, yeah, it is clear. It's why any of it happens, fuck knows. But what happens, yeah,
because the subsection to that question is natural and logical sequence of events without the need for extra context. And I would say this is one of the few movies that also gets a tick on that, because while I would like more context for it to be a satisfying story, we don't need more context for the narrative to work, I don't think. I think the narrative works all on
I
its
would
own.
agree.
So, yeah.
I would agree.
Can we see the seams of where things have been cut? No, because Cloves refuses to cut things. Is the simple answer to that one.
I think you can. Horcruxes, Harry and Ginny, you can see the seams.
Yeah, you're right.
You're
right. Yeah,
I think there's quite a bit that you can...
Yeah, it does have that weird, choppy pacing vibe that all of the Cloves once have had. The true villain of this podcast, Steve Cloves, everyone.
It's that thing of jack of all trades, master of none. Like they'd rather the script attempted everything and didn't do everything well, rather than making bigger cuts and kind of attempting a specific thing. And it's probably most frustrating with this film, because there is actually Goblet of Fire. You go, It's it's a movie of a tournament which has 3 tasks. You're kind of limited. With this, I think you could have made showing the bravery of adding things like the burrow shows you're willing to proper deviate In which case, go even bigger and bolder, and cut some large things, or make it themed, or as nuts as it is, there's probably a world where you just this is going to sound mental. Is there a world where you could have even got away with cutting the Half-Blood Prince stuff and just calling the movie something else? But anyway, maybe they were never going to be that brave. But the pieces are there. Yeah, so
is there enough school in my Wizard School movie? No. This is maybe the worst offender. There is almost no school in this movie. The fact they're in that castle is almost incidental to the movie. There is one lesson shown, and that is that.
Yeah.
Not even having set up Snape finally getting Defense Against the Dark Arts, not one lesson of Snape being Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher and, being a shithead about it. Not one.
Yeah. No, it's, there's definitely not enough school.
Nope. Needs to be more school in my Magic School movie, especially because the next one has no school, specifically because they leave. Like, well, this was your last chance to do school.
There's not even the magic because of the weird brown filter. There's not even the magic of Hogwarts. This film is not a tribute and a goodbye to Hogwarts.
No, not at all. Not at all. We'll have to see if the return to Hogwarts for the battle at the end of the final one is at least gives Hogwarts a goodbye that way. But yeah, absolutely underused the whole movie. So many of these scenes could have taken place in classrooms. Anyway, how is magic portrayed? Mostly poorly.
Mm-hmm.
We're right in the midst of Yeats's magic is secondary. They all just walk around with guns in their pockets. They're called wands, but they're just guns. We get one Expelliarmus that does the correct thing, and the rest of them. Oh, and I guess Sectum Sempra. No, to be fair, actually. The answer to that question is powers magic portrayed badly, except two moments. One is the Expelliarmus does what it's supposed to, knocks Dumbledore's wand out of his hand, which is very important they get that one right because that one plays into the final story. But also, Sectum Sempra is brutal and done very well.
You could also make an argument.
Way more blood than I was expecting.
Completely. You could also make an argument that the potions is done well. Like the lesson and the notion of the the love potion and the Felix potion and all of that sort of stuff. But
they were missing both of those potions have serious restrictions on them that are not covered in the movie.
Yeah. But if we're judging it purely on the movie, we see a different type of magic explored with potions in this movie than we have in the other movies. I guess is more my point. Right. I still think the answer. The answer is no. But I think the problem is I often look at this question, arguably too much, as is magic adding texture to the world, and what's the situation with wand guns? And we're right in the midst of wand guns, and there's no texture being added to the world with magic, apart from maybe arguably the potion side. But it's not enough. So
yeah, and I think Sectum Sempra is good as as showing a dark spell. What does dark magic look like? Yeah. They don't explain it well enough, as with everything in this movie, but that it is there. So there you go. Cool. That's the questions. That's the thingy. Shall we do Triv?
Yeah, man. Let's Triv it up.
Right. Let me. 1 second, Chris, because I've just realised my notes are in the wrong order. I'm so sorry. Will you ever forgive me?
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
In time or quite quick? Because I'd like to get to finish the podcast.
In time.
All right, that's a shame. I was hoping sooner than that.
Hopefully by Secrets of Dumbledore, I'd have forgiven you for putting your notes in the wrong order in this movie.
Wow. That's fair. Yeah. It hurts, but I understand.
I'll tell you what, Dan.
I've got my notes.
Put your hurt. Come with me to the room of requirement, and we'll have a little awkward kiss to make up for it.
There you go. Thank you. Good. After the podcast, we can have some kissing practice.
Oh no, we don't, mate. I'm in a room where I can't have a fan on or the window open because of next door's water feature. Trust me, you don't want to be kissing me right now. I smell bad. Don't worry about that.
Good stuff. Trivia time. I'll give you some trivia. Terry Gilliam was J.K. Rowling's personal choice to direct Philosopher's Stone, and didn't work out for whatever reason, unclear as to why. He was then approached to direct this movie as a result. He was like a name on the list. However, Gilliam apparently said, Warner Brothers had their chance the first time round, they blew it. So...
Oh, wow. Fair play.
Yeah. No details on specifically the casting of Jim Broadbent as Slughorn, but there is here that Bob Hoskins is also apparently considered for the role. I love Bob Hoskins, but I don't think that would have fit.
No, it's hard to imagine. And like I say, Jim Broadbent is not what I imagined when reading the book,
No.
but especially in rewatching it this time, I was like, oh no, he's brilliant in this movie.
He brings
really
a lot of charm to a role that needs it, because you've got to kind of believe that he could befriend all these famous witches and wizards. So you've got to believe that he's capable of being charming, whereas in the book sometimes you almost doubt it. You're like, this guy's so obviously slimy. Like, how does anybody fall for this? But, you know... in the movie, because it's Jim Broadbent, and Jim Broadbent is relentlessly charming, you kind of buy it more. I'd say the movie version of Slughorn almost in that sense works better than the book version because of Broadbent.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to potentially agree with that, although I will say, let us be very clear, when we say that, we're not talking about the addition of the goldfish lily thing, because that was fucking weird and unnecessary, and just doing it how they do it in the book, where Harry talks about Lily and talks about how she died, and doing it that way is better than Slughorn remembering when she gave him a fish, which isn't in the book.
Yeah, that's so weird, right? What? Because I just don't know why you would complicate that even more. Like, that's such a strange choice. Because would you have questioned it if Harry just went? You earlier on, you said my mother was one of your favorites. Well, she died saving me. You know, do you not want to?
You wouldn't even need to be.
Harry could literally say what he says in the book, which is, do you not want to help her son survive?
You wouldn't even need to do it that abruptly. Hagrid falls asleep. Slughorn looks at Harry. He pauses for a moment. You really do have your mother's eyes.
Fine.
Yeah. And then Harry says what you've just said, and then you go from there. Yeah, completely.
Right. There's no, like, it feels like they were trying to simplify it and then accidentally made it more complicated. Like, it's a real fuck up, that scene. You're right. That's not good. Anyway, apparently Bill Nye had expressed interest in appearing, and Yates had basically verbally cast him as Scrimgeour in this movie, but then when they got down to it with the script, they realised there wasn't really a place for Rufus Scrimgeour to show up in this film, so they promised Nighy he could come back in the next one, which is what happened. So we now know how that happened. But the weird one, this one, because it's like sad news, but also like she got through it, so, 10 points. But apparently Maggie Smith was completing this movie while undergoing radiotherapy as treatment for breast cancer, which is awful. And 10 points to her, because you wouldn't have known, and she gives as good a performance here as any other movie, and she's great in it because she's Maggie Smith and she's an absolute fucking treasure. But two, just chugging on. I really respect her just for just doing that. Like, I'd have been a Mardy Bum about it. I'd have just been like, no, I've got cancer. I'm not going to do a stupid wizard movie. Like, I'm going to go focus on my treatment. But she's powered through, bless her.
The scene where she's like, why is it always you three, is fantastic. She's brilliant in that scene, and all the others she's in. It's, yeah. We
haven't really talked about that. I mean, that scene has become a meme, like, especially if you're a fan. Especially if you're a fan of Formula One. For a few years, the top three in every race was always Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Valtteri Bottas. Every race, every session. So the running meme for the last couple of years has been that GIF, like that, but it's their heads pasted over Harry, Ron, and Hermione. How come whenever there's an F1 session, it's always you three, Lewis, Max, and Bottas? So it was very, very good. So yeah, that spawned a meme, which I enjoy. Yeah, so 10 points, absolute national treasure. Maggie Smith continues to be amazing as a human being. when Malfoy visits the room of requirement for the final time, apparently, this is a nice little detail, you can see the harp in the background that was used to lull Fluffy to sleep in the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone movie. That's neat. That's a good little detail.
For sure.
I like it. God, is this his name? Oh dear. Sorry, I just don't know why you would name your child Hero, but Hero finds Tiffin is the name of the young boy actor playing Tom Riddle. He was 11 at the time, and it's not a coincidence his name is Fiennes. He is the nephew of Ralph Fiennes, who plays Voldemort. Now, director David Yates has said he hired Hero not because of his direct link to Ralph playing Voldemort, but actually just because as a result of that, he looked a lot like him, so he felt like it worked because he was visually, but nepotism, nepotism evident, I'd say.
Do you think he does? Like, I don't like. Right. Unless you told me that, I never would have gone. He's probably related to Ralph Fiennes, isn't he? Like, I don't think. You know how in Doctor Who when they take a shot. When they cast a young Amy and they used Karen Gillan's like cousin or something like that, and she just looked exactly like her. And you go, well, I can understand why you did that. With this one, yes. I'm like, he's good. He actually gives a good performance. I'm not criticizing, but I don't think they particularly look alike.
Right. Yeah. If that's your logic for why you've cast it, because you're trying to avoid anyone accusing you of some form of like nepotism. I mean, I'd honestly just cop to nepotism and be like, well, it's fine. He gave a good audition. He's good in the movie. Like, no, as long as he's not terrible in the role, I think you can get away with just saying, yeah, it made sense to hire him. And also, on the note of the Karen Gillan thing, by the way, have you seen what that niece looks like now?
Yeah, Amy Pond.
She looks like Karen Gillan as an adult now. Yeah. She looked like her as a child. She looks like her as an adult. It's fucking spooky. Anyway, someone posted a picture recently on one of the subreddits, I think, and I was just like blown away. Anyway, it's crazy. She's a proper little doppelganger. Anywho, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he looks enough like him for that to be a reasonable excuse, for sure. Horace Slughorn's outfits in this movie were designed to look rich and elegant, but also a bit old and threadbare. So his costumes were all intentionally distressed to make them appear very, very worn. And in addition, were washed in a sort of powdery solution to make them almost appear as if they'd gathered dust for years, during Slughorn's retirement.
Oh, I tell you how that's more effective. Don't make your entire fucking movie look like that. The entire movie looks warm. The entire movie looks like the reel for the movie. It looks like it was shot on film, and that film was left to gather dust somewhere, and it wasn't given a wipe before the movie was put in the projector. So, I think that's a great idea. Just don't apply it to the whole fucking thing.
Gonna go ahead and agree with you there.
It wound me up at the time. It's wound me up every time I've rewatched this movie. And genuinely, I wanted to rewatch some because we watched it on Saturday, so I wanted to rewatch some of it before recording today, and I was watching it on a laptop versus a TV because I wasn't properly. I was just rewatching certain points. I caught myself basically nearly drifting off towards the end of the movie when I watched it on Saturday and felt I should probably give the ending a little rewatch. Is essentially what happened, if I'm being honest with you, Dan. And on a laptop screen, genuinely had to turn my brightness up to fucking see what was going on. So, yeah, it's a problem.
Absolute madness. Absolute madness. During the filming of the Harry Potter movies, Daniel Radcliffe went through 160 different pairs of glasses. Just thought you'd like to know that, Chris.
By the end of this podcast series, you're going to go through 20 punches.
If you think that when we get to back to normal rewind reviews and do Cool Runnings that feedback isn't, if that trivia isn't going to be there, then you're out of your mind.
I forgot we had Cool Runnings coming. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Anyway, yes, so this is actually Daniel Radcliffe's least favourite performance of his own in the franchise. He stated in an interview in 2014 he was just not very good in it. He says it's hard to watch now. He also revealed that during the time of the filming of this movie, he was actually struggling with alcohol issues, And at the time of filming, in certain scenes, he feels he can tell he was intoxicated, which is deeply sad to hear. Hollywood's a horrible place, and even though this movie was filmed in like England and stuff, it's still part of that Hollywood system through Warner Brothers. It eats these kids up and spits them out, and I'm very relieved that he came out on the other side of that. Okay, because that sounds horrible. And I'll be honest with you, Mr. Radcliffe, I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, look, buddy, Philosopher's Stone, mate. Like, don't worry about it. No performance will be as rough as that one, so you're all good.
Well, like I say, I know it's a comic relief scene, but he's absolutely brilliant in that potion scene. So yeah, I echo your thoughts about that being upsetting to hear, but being glad that he's got through that.
Even see little scenes like, but I am the chosen one. Like, his delivery on that's great. Like, it's that perfect mix of like not wanting to be too boastful, but also like, if it's gonna help me with a girl, like, I don't know. There's just something very charming about that to me. I don't know. He delivers it really well. He's great in this movie, I think. But hey ho, I think he's associating the movie with his. It sounds like there's a connection there between a dark time for him and a movie being made, so it's unsurprising that he's not a fan. But I think objectively, I don't think it's his worst performance. So yeah. While we're on the subject of sad things that happened during the filming of Harry Potter, and obviously Daniel Radcliffe's alcoholism, and we all earlier on we talked about Maggie Smith's cancer situation. This movie seems to have been dogged with a bit of several tragedies, because Robert Knox, who portrays Marcus Belby in this movie, was tragically stabbed to death just a few days after filming Wrapped on this movie on the 24th of May 2008. That's horrible. I don't know the context.
That's horrific.
I haven't looked into it. But yeah, awful situation.
Yeah, that's horrific. Thoughts to everyone on that. That's appalling.
Yeah, absolutely. No one at that age should be anywhere near a situation like that. So yeah, awful. Moving on to slightly less tragic news, because I've nothing really to add to that. Just it's in the trivia, and it is interesting to think that that this movie kind of did have a weird sort of cloud over it a little bit. There was a number of sort of things going on at that time. Moving on to some stuff that's maybe less depressing. Production designer Stuart Craig revealed that the 3 broomsticks in this movie was they were forced to design it a certain way because it had basically already been constructed for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter theme park. They basically had to replicate that for the filming because that was the whole Warner Brothers thing. They were just like, no, it's got to match the theme park now. We can't make it look different. So yeah, they didn't have much choice. Weird, but there you go. Funny old world. The tiny dragon that can be seen heating chestnuts in Diagon Alley is a small Hungarian horntail. My assumption is that's not really so much detail as it is that that's the model they had. It's already a CGI version of from 2 movies ago, so it was easier not to redesign a dragon. So, but yeah, still a nice nod.
Makes sense. Yeah, nice nod. Makes sense to me.
Yes. So there's just a bit of an interesting sort of difference from the book, I suppose, or a weird quirk of the way that this story's been told. Slughorn says that he taught the entire Black family except for Sirius. Now, as a potions teacher, he would have taught Sirius if he was there at the time, which he was. In the book, it's a little framed differently, is that he, did teach Sirius through potions, but Slughorn was head of Slytherin House, and when he says he would have liked to have completed the set, it's because Sirius was the only person in the Black family to not get into Slytherin. He went to Gryffindor. So it's more about that than it is what lessons he taught him. But the movie doesn't cover that, so it ends up just coming across a bit weird.
Classic example of the movie keeping a line from the books for the sake of it, when actually they can't make the line make contextual sense in the film.
Right. And also, wait a second. Sorry, yeah, Sirius just died. Do you want to deal with that movie? That gonna come up at all?
Yeah, I know.
It's just occurred to me, like.
Yeah, they deal with Cedric way more than they deal with Sirius.
That's embarrassing. That's bad.
Because Dan, you know, it's typical behaviour, isn't it? When there's a bereavement, you ride around on the London Underground and you hit on young women in cafes.
Yeah, while reading your paper and describing yourself as a tosser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was so weird. We not talked about that. He's a bit of a tosser. What? Like, what is happening here? What is with the dialogue in this film?
The dialogue is terrible, as always.
God.
Yeah. So, this is a big one. Because, we've played a lot of this at Yates has come in and he's kind of made these, in my opinion, pretty dull-looking, like, pretty uninspired, very generic versions of these movies that don't feel distinct like all the previous ones. To me, I can't pick out a David Yates movie the way I can pick out Alfonso Cuarón or Christopher Columbus, or even what's the name of the guy? The Goblet. Goblet had a pretty reasonably
Mike Newell.
Yeah, had a reasonably distinct look to it. So, I'm not. I don't. David Yates gets it done, kind of, but like they're all kind of a bit soulless to me. They don't have that sort of like vision that the other movies had, and I don't need it to have a particular vision, just a vision that feels distinct, right? If we're gonna change directors every couple of movies, I don't mind the director putting their visual stamp on it. I would have either rather had one guy do all of them, so it was consistent. But we're in a world when we get to this point, and we've had Cuarón, following Christopher Columbus and changing the visuals drastically. And then this, the Goblet, another shift. I'm okay with Yates's movies finding their own visual style, but instead he's kind of done this like safe amalgam of what was before. Except, the only difference is in this movie, I guess, is that horrible sheen. So the only real distinct choice he's made was a bad one. But he did have an impact on this story because apparently the original script included most or almost all of Dumbledore's memories about Voldemort. Yates was apparently the one who insisted on trimming them down. So according to Cloves, Yates wanted to showcase Voldemort's rise without getting overly involved in his past as a Riddle. So actually, that wasn't Cloves' choice.
Yeah, and I can see the logic if you're going to do everything else better, but I think you would have. It's one of the routes you could have taken, and I think just the key thing is pick a route. And the problem is by taking it away, they didn't then pick a route. They didn't. Do you make this film Harry realizing that he needs to make the hero's choice at the end with Ginny? Do you make this film a big mystery as to who the Half-Blood Prince is and the reveal that it's Snape? Do you make this film an exploration of Voldemort and go into the next film with that character study being completed, and I'm okay with them taking out the Voldemort stuff if they're going to make a choice about the other route and give it a clear defined theme and route, and which is even more noticeable coming off the back of Order of the Phoenix, which was so clearly about Harry's journey. Make this movie about something. So I don't disagree in principle with the notion of taking the memories out, as long as you're doing that to make room to make the rest of it something.
Yeah, I would agree. Well said. Yeah, strange, but there you go. So Bill Nighy, we already talked about this one. That's in here twice. Was hired to play Scrimgeour, but got reassigned. That's entered my trivia twice. Not sure why. In the Weasley twins' joke shop, the toy scene on a unicycle crossing the shop ceiling is apparently a small figure of Dolores Umbridge saying, "I will have order." So that's a fun little nod. Don't know why that's there, but I enjoyed it. Another detail I noticed actually was the decoy detonators were briefly glimpsed in the shop as well, which I liked. They're the small little bombs with legs that wander off and make a big noise somewhere to distract people so you can do whatever mischief you're up to. Oh yeah, this movie uses Peruvian instant darkness powder. Why? Why does Harry use the powder when he could just go in his invisibility cloak? Just to have the visual make it more interesting than nothing? Because I guess Harry and his invisibility cloak isn't exactly an interesting visual, I guess.
Justify the Weasleys being present, like maybe the twins and the joke shop. I don't know.
And I'm sorry, but if you're going to do the joke shop, I want to see a very clear shot of the sign that says, forget about you-know-who. We're all about our new product, you-know-poo, the constipation sensation that's sweeping the nation. And I want them to have that in the frame, and then it to cut to Mrs. Weasley and her to say, they're going to get themselves killed. Because that is one of my favourite bits from the book.
But I tell you what, it would also make sense. None of this, how come they're surviving? Well, everyone needs a laugh, bollocks. Because you just look at the rest of the street and go, no, everyone else is getting kidnapped and, like, beaten up. And why, what? Like, it doesn't, they make the rest of Diagon Alley so dark and threatening and scary.
And dilapidated and boarded up and, absolutely.
That in the film, it just makes no sense that that they're still there and not getting attacked.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. By the time of this movie's release, J.K. Rowling stated that this was her favourite one of the 6 movie adaptations. But I'm sure she said that on the press tour for all of these movies, so I'm not sure. She did her job, I guess. The working title for this movie... Go on, sorry.
Clearly had the money to watch it on a screen with the brightness turned up.
Yep. That's what Harry Potter money can do for you, baby. You get a special laptop with extra brightness settings. The working title for this movie that stopped them from, being like charged more when they wanted to do shoots at various locations was that the movie was labeled as a movie called Champion. So that was the title. So originally this movie was going to be released in November 21, like all the others. It was going to be like a wintry, like in towards Christmas release in 2008. But they decided after The Dark Knight came out in July of 2008 and was a huge hit, Warner's decided that they basically wanted to capitalize on that same time slot the next year with a big movie. They didn't have anything else to put in that slot the next year, so they just moved Harry Potter for no reason at all from November 21st, 2008 to July 15th, 2009. They then gave the open November slot to Twilight.
What a load of bollocks, because I've made it very clear. It's been quite subtle, Dan, but I don't like the muted colours in this movie. But it's even worse knowing it was presented as a fucking summer movie. Like, I don't like them, but it certainly suits Christmas time better.
Yeah, because, even the Quidditch match happens at the snow, which I thought was a nice touch to show us time passing.
Yeah.
Well, you're right.
Is it snowing? I thought it was just shit weather. Is it snowing?
Yeah, there's like snow everywhere.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah.
Which is a nice detail. I was like, yeah, cool. All right. Because I will say to this franchise of movies credit, all the Quidditch matches have been very visually distinct from each other. The very first one was bright and brutal. The second one was kind of all about that bludger that was chasing Harry, and it all went under the rafters and stuff and was all kind of dark and all surrounded by wood, as they were chased by the bludger. The third one was all rainy and stormy, and then the clouds formed a big dog for no reason. Then we haven't had Quidditch since the third one, I don't think, because there's none in the fourth or the fifth. So we come back to this one, and it's winter, and it's got its own visual, distinct sort of style, because it's there's snow on everything. I was like, I thought that was nice.
I'll just get it, because I just don't remember it there being snow specifically. But
I don't think it's snowing. I think there's just like snow on the pitch. And like snow on the stands and stuff. I could be, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the crazy one. I have no way to check.
There's sort of snow in the mountains in the background, maybe, but I can't see any specific. No, that's water, isn't it? I thought the snow was Azkaban, I must admit.
No, Azkaban's rain. Yeah. It's definitely rain. It's a big storm, 100%, because that's the.
There's a close up of. I think it's just the use of the word snow. So there's a close up of the stands when there's people sat on it, and like it looks more like frost to me on the sides. I was picturing like literally a snowy scene, kind of like the scene where Thingamajig gets with the necklace and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that makes.
Is that during the Quidditch? So is that the Quidditch trials, or the Quidditch match? You're looking at.
What I was just looking at was the Quidditch match.
The one where Ron thinks he's had the Felix Felicis.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Anyway, I've lost the thread of.
Oh wait, hold on. There is another match later on.
No, there's only one match.
Oh, that was the trials. You're right. During the match, it's snowing. Yeah, no, you're right. During the trials, it's not snowing. During the match, it is.
Right, there you go.
I was looking at the wrong thing just then.
Cool. Yeah, I feel because when you described the stands with frost, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the trial earlier on, but I didn't want because I've got it in front of me. I didn't want to be a dick about it.
No, you're right. Yeah, no, it's it is snowing on the match. I've got that wrong. I was picturing the trials in my head, and when I was scanning through, I was looking at the trials. The match, there's definitely snow on the ground.
There you go. So they at the time, the Warner Brothers claimed that move from winter into summer was actually a result of the writers' strike. But it was, I think pretty much everyone knew it was really because of this Dark Knight thing. It was like an open secret. So there you go. So very final piece of standard trivia before we get into our world famous segment. Originally, the shooting script was written so that Harry takes possession of the wand after he's killed. Shortly before filming began, the final book in the series came out in which Dumbledore's wand and who possesses it turned out to be a major factor, and the script had to be changed. So I don't understand how J.K. can get enough of an advance warning that she can say, hey, make sure you put creature in. Yet this happened.
Yeah, it's just the inconsistencies of what is told. And it could, it could be maybe she was telling Cloves things and not telling the production. So maybe that's the difference in line. But yeah, I think that's madness that the creature thing happened and not that.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris, it is time for our famous segment, Cars Exist. Meow.
Meow.
So, there are only two vehicles in this entire movie. In Dumbledore's flashback to Voldemort's childhood, orphanage, we get a glimpse of a 1935 Humber 12 Vogue saloon. It's only partially viewed, but it is pretty cool. It's a neat little car. The other one is actually not a car at all, because guess what, Chris? I think it's Bikes Exist time.
No.
Yeah. A 1956 Norman Nippy is visible in Mr. Weasley's little shed of Muggle artifacts, along with like a bunch of typewriters and an inkjet printer and like a bunch of weird other shit. But yeah, the Norman Nippy, which is
nice touch.
Oh, it's a pedal bike. I've just looked that up. A Norman Nippy is
a nice touch. I like that.
Yeah, it's a pedal bike. I thought it was a motorized bike.
Oh, in that case, we need to redo the noises, Dan.
Oh wait, no, it's like a combo. Oh my god, it's like a motorized pedal bike. I've never seen anything like it. It's got like a little engine under it, but it's a pedal bike. Oh, that's so strange. There's no pedals, but it looks. Oh wow. No, I think we did the exact right noise, Chris, because it is kind of a motorized bike.
In that case, it's the wrong bike to put there, because what's upsetting about this is the point of Mr. Weasley is he gets excited over the most normal of things, and yet you have just got as excited as he would about this bike because it's a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, I've never seen. I've genuinely. That is a really fascinating thing that exists that I will be Googling later to find out more about. How cool is that? Norman Nippy. Noted.
Nice.
Yeah, I genuinely like that. All right, so we're here, Chris. It's time to do some. We're time to do some rankings. So I'm gonna come straight out and say, just like for me, this is second to worst. It's not as bad as Goblet, but it's pretty bad. So it's like for me, it's like Goblet's right at the bottom. This one's barely better than it. I think it gets away with it a little more, because there's a little more of that teen angst stuff, which at least like was the best thing about Goblet, and is probably still the best thing about this, even if it doesn't really pay off narratively. It's still a lot of fun to see all these characters interacting with each other and all the love story stuff going on. The rest of it's a mess, though. Then obviously for me, it's 1, 3, 5, and then 2 is still my top. Although I'm debating 5 and 2, switching around every time I think about this. But at the moment, 4 is my bottom, 6, 1. 3, 5, 2. Where's this going for you, Chris?
It's going at the bottom for me.
Yeah.
I think its crimes for me are bigger than any crime committed in Goblet. So the crime of obviously the filter, the crime of it not really being about anything, not picking a lane. So yeah, for me personally, I'd put it at the bottom, which means my ranking goes 6, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah.
5 being your favorite. Yeah, I think that's right. And you know what's funny is I've also made a note of yours from last week, and I put 6 at the bottom of your ranking when I added 6 to my second to last. I had a feeling that's where that was going to go, so I'm pleased I called it. Like I predicted I predicted your answer and got it right. So yeah, look, I mean, it's one of the worst ones. Not shocking. I remember it being one of the worst ones. There's a reason I haven't seen it since I saw it in the cinema. I don't think the next 2 are any better. Well, maybe they are. I have no idea. Excuse me.
My memory of these next 2 is that I can't really remember the next one much. But my memory of the final one is that it's better than these 2. But we shall see.
I remember the debate about the dance scene from the next movie being a big part of discussions people had about the next movie. I remember the arguments both in favor and against it. I'm so curious to see how it's going to play.
Yeah, I look forward to revisiting that because I've listened to that Cloves Rowling discussion where they talk about that quite a bit, and I kind of know the thinking behind it, which I wonder if that's going to influence how I feel about it when I rewatch it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
well, I haven't seen the final that, film. So don't repeat it. We'll talk about it when we do it.
No, I won't. No, I won't. No, I'll let it makes sense for one to have the information, one to not. The seventh, the final one. I mean, it has one moment which made me piss myself in the cinema, despite the fact that no one else laughed and people were looking at me like I was a dick. But it was so stupid to me. So that's a big memory of it. And it has a line change which I find as irritating. And notice myself, I haven't watched Movie Flames videos yet, but it has a line change to an iconic line which fucking infuriates me every time I watch it. So
the very ending infuriates me every time. Not the epilogue. The ending to the major conflict infuriates me massively.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah. I know what your big complaint about that is. So next week's intriguing because we've got more kind of clearer memories and opinions already on the final movie. So
that's true, but I think the problem with this one is like we said it, didn't we? Like, this one's kind of nothing, right? It's not about anything. It doesn't go anywhere. It makes a lot of sense to me that this is the one I had like zero memories of. Like at least. The only thing I remember from this movie, genuinely, was but I am the chosen one. That's the only thing I knew was coming.
Oh no, I mean part 1 versus part 2 of Deathly Hallows. Other than the dance discussion, we've got a lot more kind of I remember that about part 2. Part 1 obviously has one has a bit of a reputation of them doing a lot of wandering in the woods. So I'm excited to watch next week.
Yeah, because if they use that to do character stuff, that's fine. I think that's okay. It's just, so we'll see. I do remember being very smug though, as when these came out, when we knew it was going to be 2 parts, a lot of people were discussing where they were going to split the books. And I remember calling it months and months out, just like it's going to be here. It's going to be exactly this. This will be basically the last shot of the movie. And I was spot on. And I will remain smug about that until my dying day.
I think I had that debate with you. And you were just as... You are correct, Dan. You are just as much of a smug prick about it now as you were at the time. Yep. So, yeah. Well done, you.
Well, you know what, though? The more people... tell me I'm wrong, the more smug I get. So I spent a lot of time talking to people about that, where they were going to split it and being told that was not the place. And I was like, no, it makes perfect sense. I was so convinced, and I was in the mind of Steve Cloves briefly. So going forward, everything I say is going to be a non sequitur with no conclusion.
I was going to say, what a thing to brag about, Dan. God. I always feel I could brag more that I didn't get it.
Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. 2.5 hours is way too long to have discussed this fucking nothing of a movie. So thanks very much for listening. You can get us all the usual places. Patreon, if you want to hear us talk about Deathly Hallows Part 1 right now on the Patreon. We put them up a week early. It's as little as $1 a month you get access. We do also do episodes of Analyzing Avatar a week early as well. So when that comes back later in the year, you'll be able to hear that. If you'd like to support us in a non-financial way, there are a couple of different ways you could do it. You can listen, just keep listening. We like that. You can tell a friend. That's good too. You probably know someone who likes Harry Potter. They might enjoy these podcasts. Feel free. The other thing you can do is tell the various apps and services that these podcasts are available through that you enjoyed it. So if you're on YouTube, give us a like or a subscribe. If you're on iTunes, give us a review, as many stars as you feel we have earned. Spotify has a review system. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's just like you'd say you liked it, I think. But whatever platform you're using, it probably has some sort of review system. You can help us out by using that to tell it you liked this, and then it will share this with other humans. I think that's all that's covered. So if you have any thoughts of your own, and I'm sure you all have many, feel free to head over to the YouTube channel and drop them in the comments of this video, the video version of this. And by the way, I'll clarify now for anyone who gets excited, the video versions of these do not have our faces. You can't see us talking. They're just literally this podcast uploaded on YouTube with a still image. So just to go and set expectations there, because I know people do enjoy like when you can watch a podcast with people's facial expressions as well. But we do these in the middle of the day. I'm not setting up a camera. I can't be asked. It's too much effort. And editing. Ugh, no, thank you.
We don't even record them that way, despite the rising in sort of meeting technology, meaning that actually it would probably be easier for us to at least see each other and connect the headphones to a computer, as opposed to the way we've always done it, which is to phone each other. We don't even record that way, so literally that footage doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so if you want to drop a comment, you can do it via that. You can also send us a message on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolin. Chris is at cbillingham with 2 M's. You can also send us an email if you've got lots of thoughts to mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. And by lots of thoughts, I mean more thoughts than a tweet will contain. I think that's all of it, though. So yeah, thanks everyone so much. We're really enjoying doing these. They've been fascinating. I've been threatening to revisit these movies for a long time. So I'm really glad I'm getting a chance to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. There we go. That's everything. I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolin.
And this review from the Wizarding World has been rewound.
I thought I'd get less annoyed over time. Like I'd accept it eventually. This whole Wizarding World thing still infuriates me. Imagine if they didn't call the Fast and the Furious franchise the Fast and Furious. They're like, oh, it's the Fast Cars franchise. This movie is set in the Fast Cars world. Well, all movies could have fast cars.
No, you've picked it. Fast and Furious could get away with that. You've picked an example there where it's like,
disagree.
Yeah,
no, that would be just as bad to me. Awful.
The world of dinosaurs, covering all Jurassic Park movies. Yeah. There we go.
Just
still annoys Dan.
Honestly, I really thought this would be hard to do after a couple of weeks. This whole bit we've just decided me being annoyed at that every time. I genuinely am annoyed every time, like properly. Like it's not going away. I'm not having to force it like I thought I would by now. I'm genuinely re-annoyed every single time. It's remarkable, really.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's a sign of how bad it is.
Yeah. So fuck you, Warner Brothers.
Because I didn't realise how much Game of Thrones have done it recently with like the whole Game of Thrones House of Dragons. But at least they've stuck to, something that it already is. Right.
Yeah.
Why not just have had the world from you could have had from the world of Harry Potter,
right?
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them,
right? Why not? It's fine.
Or even done that from the mind of J.K. Rowling thing.
Sure. Or from J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World, so specifically her Wizarding World. Then you can get away with it, because otherwise it's just too generic. I don't know. I'm repeating myself at this point, but it's fucking infuriating. It's terrible. It's a bad name. You should all be ashamed of yourselves, whoever came up with that. Terrible branding.
Bye.
Bye.